They say a woman's reputation is more fragile than glass, and twice as sharp when it shatters. In 1876, Evelyn Carter learned this truth the hard way, when a powerful man's lie branded her broken goods and drove her from Denver with nothing but shame trailing behind her like a funeral veil. She thought Montana might offer mercy. Instead, she found a sheriff's pistol aimed at her heart and a crowd hungry for her blood. But then a cowboy stepped out of the dust, a man scarred by his own past, and said 5 words that would change everything. Then she's the only kind I'll ever buy again. Stay with me until the end of this story and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Evelyn's journey travels across this world. The stagecoach lurched to a halt in a cloud of Montana dust, and Evelyn Carter pressed her gloved hand against the window, her breath fogging the glass. Through the haze, she could make out the wooden buildings of Willow Ridge, weathered storefronts, a church steeple piercing the endless blue sky, and clusters of people who had stopped mid-stride to stare at the new arrival. She closed her eyes and steadied herself. A fresh start. That's all I need. Just one chance to prove I'm more than what they said I was. The driver's voice boomed from above. "Willow Ridge, end of the line, ma'am!" Evelyn gathered her worn carpetbag and the small trunk that held everything she owned. 3 dresses, her sewing kit, her aunt's letter informing her of the dress shop inheritance, and a tarnished locket containing her mother's portrait. She descended the steps carefully, her boots touching the dirt road with a soft crunch. The moment her feet hit the ground, silence fell over Main Street like a heavy curtain. Evelyn lifted her chin, refusing to let her hands tremble as she smoothed her traveling dress, a modest navy affair with only the barest hint of lace at the collar. She'd learned in Denver that even the smallest flourish could be weaponized against a woman like her. "That's her," someone whispered. "The one from Denver. I heard she—" "Hush, she'll hear you." But Evelyn had already heard. She'd been hearing whispers for 6 months, ever since Victor Langford had destroyed her life with a single calculated lie. She forced herself to walk toward the general store, each step deliberate and steady despite the weight of dozens of eyes. The telegram she'd sent ahead should have prepared the town. Her Aunt Josephine's lawyer had assured her the dress shop was legitimately hers, that no one could contest the inheritance. What he hadn't mentioned was whether the good people of Willow Ridge would let her actually run it. "Hold it right there." The command cracked through the air like a whip. Evelyn froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. A man emerged from the sheriff's office, his silver star catching the afternoon sun. Sheriff Maddox was exactly what she'd feared, broad-shouldered, granite-jawed, with eyes that had already judged and convicted her before she'd spoken a single word. His hand rested on the revolver at his hip, not threatening exactly, but not welcoming either. "Evelyn Carter?" His voice carried across the street, ensuring everyone could hear. "Yes." She kept her voice level. "I'm here to claim my inheritance. My aunt's dress shop. I know why you're here." Maddox stepped off the boardwalk, his boots thudding against the packed earth. "Question is whether we're going to let you stay." A murmur rippled through the growing crowd. Evelyn saw women pulling their children closer, men crossing their arms and nodding in agreement with the sheriff. Her stomach twisted, but she held her ground. "I have every legal right." "Legal and right ain't always the same thing, Miss Carter." Maddox stopped 3 feet from her, close enough that she could smell the tobacco on his breath. "We're a respectable town. Family town. We don't take kindly to women with certain reputations." Heat flooded Evelyn's cheeks, not from shame, but from fury. "I don't know what you've heard, Sheriff, but I know what I need to know." He cut her off with a raised hand. "Victor Langford is a respected businessman, pillar of Denver society. When a man like that says a woman stole from him and tried to seduce him to cover her tracks, well," he shrugged, "folks tend to believe him." The words hit her like physical blows. Even here, hundreds of miles from Denver, Langford's poison had spread. "That's not what happened," Evelyn said, her voice shaking now despite her best efforts. "He lied. He came to my room when his wife was away. He tried to— I rejected him, and he— Enough!" Maddox's hand moved to his gun. "I don't want to hear your version of events. What I want is for you to get back on that stage when it comes through tomorrow and head somewhere else. Somewhere your kind belongs." "My kind?" The words tasted like ash. "What exactly is my kind, Sheriff?" Broken goods, he said flatly. Damaged, used up. We got enough problems in this town without importing them from Denver. The crowd murmured its approval. Evelyn saw women nodding, their lips pressed into thin, satisfied lines. She recognized that look, the same one she'd seen on the society ladies in Denver who'd once welcomed her into their homes for fittings and tea, then slammed their doors in her face the moment Langford's accusations spread. "I haven't done anything wrong," she said, hating how small her voice sounded. "I have nowhere else to go." "Should have thought of that before you—" The sharp crack of a gunshot split the air. Evelyn screamed and dropped to her knees, her hands flying to cover her head. The bullet had passed so close she'd felt the air displace next to her cheek. Dust puffed up from the spot where it had struck the ground, inches from where she'd been standing. "Warning shot," Maddox said calmly, his revolver still smoking. "Next one won't miss. Now, you suggest what exactly?" The new voice cut through the chaos like a blade, deep, rough-edged, and absolutely furious. Evelyn looked up through the tangle of her hair to see a rider approaching from the far end of Main Street. He sat astride a massive black horse, his figure backlit by the late afternoon sun, so that for a moment he seemed less like a man and more like an avenging shadow. As he drew closer, details emerged. He was tall, powerfully built beneath a dust-stained shirt and worn leather vest. Dark hair fell past his collar, and several days' worth of stubble shadowed his jaw. But it was his eyes that caught her, pale gray, storm-colored, and fixed on Sheriff Maddox with an intensity that made even the lawman take a step back. "Rowan?" Maddox's tone shifted, becoming less certain. "This ain't your concern. You just fired a weapon at an unarmed woman in the middle of town." The rider, Rowan, dismounted in one fluid motion, his boots hitting the ground with authority. "I'd say that makes it everyone's concern." "She's trouble." Maddox gestured toward Evelyn with his gun, making her flinch. "I'm protecting this town." "By shooting women?" Rowan moved between them, physically blocking the sheriff's line of fire. Up close, Evelyn could see the hard planes of his face, the scar that cut through his left eyebrow, the way his hands hung loose and ready at his sides. A man who knew how to fight and wasn't afraid to do it. "That's a hell of a way to keep the peace, Sheriff." "You don't understand. This woman, she's—" "I know exactly who she is." Rowan's gaze flicked down to Evelyn, still kneeling in the dust, and something in his expression softened for just a heartbeat before hardening again. "Josephine Carter's niece. Inherited the dress shop. Got every right to be here." "Rights don't mean nothing when you're talking about a woman who— Who what?" Rowan's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Go ahead, Sheriff. Say it loud enough for everyone to hear. Tell us all exactly what crime she's been convicted of. Because last I checked, accusations and convictions are two different things." Maddox's jaw worked, but no words came out. "That's what I thought." Rowan turned slightly, addressing the crowd that had gathered. "Any of you got actual proof this woman did something wrong? Evidence? A trial verdict?" Silence answered him. "No?" Rowan's lip curled. "Then maybe we should all remember that we've got plenty of our own dirty laundry in this town, glass houses and all that." An uncomfortable shuffle moved through the onlookers. Evelyn watched faces turn away, suddenly finding the ground or the sky intensely interesting. "She's damaged goods, McAllister." Maddox practically spat the words. "We don't need her kind here." The world seemed to hold its breath. Rowan McAllister, because that's who he was, Evelyn realized. The rancher she'd heard mentioned even in Denver, the man who'd built an empire from nothing, looked at her for a long moment. His gray eyes swept over her disheveled hair, her dusty dress, her hands still shaking from the near-miss bullet. Then he looked back at the sheriff and said, clear as a church bell, "Then she's the only kind I'll ever buy again." The words landed like thunder. Evelyn's breath caught. Around them, the crowd erupted in whispers and gasps. Maddox's face turned purple. "What the hell does that mean?" the sheriff demanded. "It means," Rowan said, each word deliberate and sharp, "that I've got no use for perfect, pristine things that break the first time life gets hard. I'll take someone who's been through the fire and came out the other side standing. That's worth more than all your so-called respectability combined." He extended his hand down to Evelyn. She stared at it, calloused, scarred, trembling slightly with suppressed rage. and felt something shift in her chest. This stranger, this man who owed her nothing, had just painted a target on his own back to defend her. "Ma'am," he said quietly, just for her, "let me help you up." Evelyn placed her hand in his. His grip was warm and solid and surprisingly gentle as he pulled her to her feet. She stumbled slightly, her legs unsteady, but he steadied her with a hand on her elbow. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet." But his eyes held something that might have been the ghost of a smile. "You're about to make some enemies just by standing next to me." "I think I already had enemies before I arrived." "Fair point." Rowan turned back to Maddox, still keeping himself between the sheriff and Evelyn. "She's staying. The shop is legally hers. You've got no grounds to force her out, and if you try, you'll answer to me. We clear?" Maddox's hand twitched toward his gun. "I wouldn't," Rowan said softly. "You might wear a badge, but that doesn't make you bulletproof. And everyone here knows I'm a better shot than you." It wasn't a boast, just a fact, stated plainly. The sheriff's hand dropped. "This ain't over, McAllister." "I expect not." Rowan collected Evelyn's carpetbag and trunk with an ease that spoke of hard labor and strong muscles. "But for today, it is. Come on, Miss Carter. I'll help you get settled." Evelyn followed him on shaking legs, acutely aware of every eye boring into her back. Rowan's horse followed obediently as he led her down Main Street toward a small building with faded lettering, Josephine's Fine Dresses. "You knew my aunt?" she asked quietly. Everyone knew Josephine. She was a good woman. Fair. Honest. He glanced at her. "She talked about you in her letters to friends. Said you had real talent with a needle." "Did she—" Evelyn swallowed hard. "Did she know what happened in Denver?" "She knew you were coming here to escape something. That was enough for her." Rowan stopped in front of the shop, setting down her trunk. "Should be enough for everyone else, too, but people like their gossip more than their sense." The shop was small but charming. A bow window displaying a faded dress form, a cheerful yellow door that needed fresh paint, and window boxes that had once held flowers but now sprouted only weeds. Rowan produced a key from his pocket. "Lawyer gave me this to hold for you. Figured you'd need someone to keep an eye on the place until you arrived. You've been watching my inheritance?" Evelyn took the key, their fingers brushing. "Why?" "Because Josephine asked me to. Before she passed, she made me promise I'd make sure her niece got a fair shake in this town." His expression darkened. "Looks like I'm already failing at that promise." "You stopped the sheriff from shooting me. I'd call that more than a fair shake." "He wasn't going to shoot you, just scare you." Rowan's jaw tightened. "But that doesn't make it right." Evelyn unlocked the door, and it swung open with a creak. The interior was dusty but intact. Bolts of fabric stacked neatly on shelves, a large cutting table in the center, a sewing machine by the window, and a staircase leading to what must be living quarters above. "It's perfect," she breathed. "It's a start." Rowan carried her trunk inside, setting it down carefully. "You'll need supplies, probably. Food, lamp oil, firewood for when winter comes. I can have my foreman bring some things by tomorrow." "I can't accept charity." "It's not charity. Call it an investment." He studied her face, those storm-gray eyes seeing more than she wanted to reveal. "You're going to need allies in this town, Miss Carter, people who'll do business with you even when others won't. My ranch employs 20 men, plus house staff. That's a lot of people who need clothes mended, shirts made, winter coats repaired. You give us fair prices and quality work, we'll keep you busy." Evelyn's throat tightened. "Why are you doing this? You don't know me." "No," he agreed, "but I know what it's like to be judged for something you didn't do. To have people look at you and see only what they want to see instead of the truth." There was a story there, hidden in the shadows of his voice. Evelyn wanted to ask, but something in his expression told her not to. Not yet. "I'll earn my keep," she said instead. "Whatever work you need done, I'll do it well." "I don't doubt it." Rowan moved toward the door, then paused. "One more thing, Maddox wasn't wrong when he said you'd have trouble here. Some folks won't care about truth or fairness. They'll just want someone to look down on. It's going to be hard." "I know. But you've also got people who'll stand with you." His hand rested on the doorframe. "Starting with me." "Why?" The question burst out before she could stop it. Why would you risk your reputation for someone you just met? Rowan was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he spoke, his voice was soft. Because someone did it for me once. When I had nothing and no one. When the whole world had written me off as trouble, one person stood up and said I deserved a chance. Changed my whole life. Figure it's time I paid that forward. Before Evelyn could respond, he tipped his hat and stepped outside. Welcome to Willow Ridge, Miss Carter. Try to stay out of trouble. Then he was gone, swinging up onto his horse and riding away down Main Street, leaving Evelyn standing in the doorway of her new life. She watched him go until he disappeared around a corner, then turned back to the dusty shop. Through the window, she could see townspeople still gathered in clusters, talking and pointing. Some faces were hostile, others curious. A few, very few, seemed thoughtful, as if Rowan's words had planted seeds of doubt about the gossip they'd so readily believed. Evelyn closed the door and leaned against it, her legs finally giving out. She slid down to sit on the floor, her hands pressed to her face. For 6 months, she'd been running. Running from Denver, from Langford's lies, from the way even her friends had turned their backs when he had accused her of theft and attempted seduction. The truth hadn't mattered, only that a wealthy, powerful man had spoken against a young seamstress with no family and no protection. She'd lost everything. Her position, her home, her reputation. The police had searched her room and found nothing because there was nothing to find, but the damage had been done. Even her employer, Mrs. Langford, had looked at her with such cold hatred that Evelyn had packed her bags that very night and fled. And then Aunt Josephine's letter had arrived like a miracle. An inheritance, a chance to start over somewhere no one knew her name. Except they did know. Somehow, Langford's poison had spread even here. Evelyn looked around the shop, at the years of her aunt's hard work evident in every carefully organized spool of thread, every bolt of fabric. Josephine had built something real here, something honest. I can do the same, Evelyn thought fiercely. I will do the same. She stood, brushing dust from her skirt, and began exploring her new home properly. The shop took up the ground floor, generous by most standards, with good light from the bow window and enough space for customers to browse comfortably. The sewing machine was an older model but well-maintained, and the cutting table was solid oak. Upstairs she found a small apartment. One bedroom with a brass bed frame and a patchwork quilt, a sitting area with a rocking chair and fireplace, and a tiny kitchen with a cast-iron stove. Simple. Clean. Hers. Evelyn set her carpet bag on the bed and opened it, pulling out the few possessions she'd managed to save. The dresses would need airing out and pressing. Her sewing kit was intact, thank God. The scissors and needles and measuring tape that had been her grandmother's, passed down through 3 generations of women who'd made their living with their hands and their skill. And the locket. Always the locket. She opened it, looking at her mother's sweet face captured in miniature. Sarah Carter had died when Evelyn was 12, taken by influenza in the harsh winter of 1864. Her father had followed 2 years later, his heart simply giving out from grief and hard living. "I'm trying, Mama," Evelyn whispered to the portrait. "I'm trying to make you proud." A knock on the door downstairs made her jump. She tucked the locket back into her bag and descended carefully, her heart hammering. Through the window, she could see a woman standing on the step, middle-aged, wearing a practical brown dress and carrying a covered basket. Evelyn opened the door cautiously. "Can I help you?" "Name's Martha Hayes." The woman's face was neutral, neither friendly nor hostile. "I run the boarding house down the street. Josephine was a good friend of mine." "Oh." Evelyn wasn't sure what to say. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Our loss." "She talked about you." Martha studied her with sharp eyes. "Said you had a gift for sewing. Said you'd been dealt some hard cards, but you were a fighter." She was kind to say so. Josephine didn't say things to be kind. She said them because they were true. Martha thrust the basket forward. "I brought you supper. Figured you'd be too tired to cook after traveling." Evelyn took the basket, its weight warm against her hands. "Thank you. That's very generous." "It's practical." Martha's tone was brisk. "Can't have you starving before you even open the shop. Town needs a seamstress, and you're the only one we've got now that Josephine's gone." It wasn't exactly warmth, but it wasn't rejection either. Evelyn felt something in her chest unknot slightly. I heard what happened with Maddox, Martha continued, and I heard what Rowan McAllister said. She paused, then added carefully, I don't know you, and I don't know what's true about Denver, but I knew your aunt, and she was a good judge of character. If she left you this shop, she must have believed in you. That's enough for me to give you a chance. A chance is all I'm asking for, Evelyn said quietly. Martha nodded. Then you'll get one. Fair warning, though, not everyone in town will be as reasonable. Maddox has influence, and he's not the forgiving type. You're going to need to prove yourself. I understand. Good. Martha turned to leave, then looked back. One more thing. Rowan McAllister is a good man, but he's also got his own ghosts. Don't mistake his kindness for something it's not. He helps people because he's decent, not because he's looking for anything in return. I never thought, just making sure we're clear. Martha's expression softened slightly. Welcome to Willow Ridge, Miss Carter. I hope you find what you're looking for here. Then she was gone, walking briskly back down the street. Evelyn carried the basket upstairs and uncovered it to find fresh bread, cold chicken, cheese, and apples. Her eyes stung with unexpected tears. Such a simple kindness, but after months of closed doors and turned backs, it felt like a feast. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, and watched through her window as the sun set over Willow Ridge. The town glowed golden in the fading light, false-fronted buildings casting long shadows, the church steeple pointing toward heaven, mountains rising purple and majestic in the distance. It could be home, she thought, if she was brave enough, if she worked hard enough, if she could outlast the gossip and the hatred and prove that she was more than Langford's lies. Then she's the only kind I'll ever buy again. Rowan's words echoed in her mind as stars began to prick the darkening sky. Broken goods, damaged, flawed, but also strong, tested, surviving. Evelyn Carter had been through fire. She bore the scars, but she was still standing, and she wasn't done fighting yet. As night fell completely over Willow Ridge, Evelyn lit a lamp and began unpacking her sewing supplies. Tomorrow, she would clean the shop. She would inventory the fabric and supplies. She would open the doors and wait for customers, however few they might be. She would build a life here, brick by brick, stitch by stitch. And maybe, just maybe, she would prove that broken things could be made whole again. In the darkness outside, she didn't see the figure watching from across the street, didn't know that Rowan McAllister had doubled back, unable to shake the image of her kneeling in the dust with a bullet singing past her head. He stood in the shadows, making sure no one bothered her first night in town, making sure she was safe, because he'd meant what he said, every word. And because something about Evelyn Carter, her straight spine despite her fear, her refusal to apologize for crimes she didn't commit, the way she'd taken his hand without hesitation, had struck a chord in his chest that hadn't rung in years. Rowan watched until her lamp went out, until he was certain she was settled for the night. Then he mounted his horse and rode back to his ranch, already planning how he could help her without making it obvious, how he could shield her from the worst of the town's cruelty while she found her footing. He told the sheriff she was the only kind he'd ever buy again. What he hadn't said was that it was already too late, that the moment he'd seen her defying Maddox with terror in her eyes but steel in her voice, something had shifted, something he'd thought dead and buried after all the losses and betrayals that had driven him to Montana in the first place. Hope. Dangerous, foolish, impossible hope. Rowan shook his head at his own idiocy and urged his horse into a gallop, racing away from Willow Ridge and the woman who'd already burrowed under his skin without even trying. Behind him, in the small apartment above the dress shop, Evelyn Carter slept fitfully, dreaming of bullets and accusations and storm-gray eyes that looked at her like she mattered. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, new chances to fail or succeed. But tonight, for the first time in 6 months, she wasn't running. She was home. Morning arrived with the sound of hammers and wagon wheels, the bustle of a frontier town coming to life. Evelyn woke stiff and disoriented, momentarily forgetting where she was, until she saw the unfamiliar rafters above her head and remembered Montana, Willow Ridge, her new beginning. She dressed quickly in her simplest work dress, pinned her dark hair into a practical bun, and descended to the shop. Sunlight streamed through the bow window, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like tiny spirits. The space looked even more neglected in the harsh morning light, but Evelyn refused to be discouraged. She'd built something from nothing before. She could do it again. She started with the windows, scrubbing away months of grime until the glass sparkled. Then she swept the floors, organized the fabric bolts by color and type, oiled the sewing machine until it purred smoothly under her hands. By noon, sweat dampened her collar and her arms ached, but the shop was beginning to look like a place of business again. She was wrestling a heavy bolt of wool back onto its shelf when the door opened behind her. "Need a hand with that?" Evelyn spun around so fast she nearly dropped the fabric. Rowan McAllister stood in the doorway, his broad shoulders blocking most of the light. He'd cleaned up since yesterday, fresh shirt, shaved jaw, hair tied back, but those storm-gray eyes were just as intense. "Mr. McAllister," she managed, acutely aware of how disheveled she must look. "I didn't expect— that is, you don't need to—" "Rowan," he interrupted gently. "And I told you I'd send supplies. Figured I'd bring them myself instead." He gestured over his shoulder where a wagon waited, loaded with crates and sacks. "Where do you want everything?" Evelyn's throat tightened. "I can't possibly accept all that. It's not charity." Rowan stepped inside, taking the bolt of wool from her hands with ease and sliding it onto the high shelf she'd been struggling to reach. "It's business. You're going to need supplies to run the shop, and I need someone who can make quality work clothes for my men. Consider this an advance on future services." "That's still too generous." "Then work hard and make it worth my while." He studied the transformed shop with approval. "You've done a lot already. Place looks 100 times better than yesterday." "It needed it." Evelyn wiped her dusty hands on her apron. "I want to open by the end of the week." "Ambitious." Rowan moved back to the wagon and began unloading supplies. Flour, sugar, coffee, lamp oil, candles, salt pork, dried beans. Practical things. Things she desperately needed but hadn't known how she'd afford. Most folks would take longer to settle in. "I can't afford to wait. The longer I'm closed, the more people will assume I'm not serious about staying." Evelyn followed him outside, lowering her voice. "And the more time they have to decide I'm not welcome." Rowan set down a sack of flour with a thud. "You worried about Maddox?" "I'm worried about everyone." She glanced down Main Street where a few townspeople had stopped to watch them with undisguised curiosity. "The sheriff isn't the only one who thinks I shouldn't be here." "No," Rowan admitted, "but he's the loudest about it. The others will follow whatever lead he sets, at least at first. Your job is to prove him wrong before he can poison the whole town." "And how exactly do I do that?" "By being so damn good at what you do that they can't afford to ignore you." Rowan carried another crate inside, this one filled with candles and matches. "By showing up every day, doing honest work, treating people with respect even when they don't deserve it. Eventually most of them will come around." "Most," Evelyn repeated, "but not all." "Not all," he agreed. "Some people are just determined to be miserable, and they want company. Don't give them the satisfaction." They worked in silence for a while, transferring supplies from wagon to shop. Evelyn tried not to notice how careful Rowan was, how he made sure to keep the heavier items within easy reach on lower shelves, how he organized everything with the efficiency of someone who understood the demands of running a business. When the last crate was stored in the small kitchen upstairs, Rowan produced a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "Almost forgot. This is a list of what my men need, shirts mostly, some trousers, winter coats when the season turns. I took measurements last week. Figured you'd want to get started right away." Evelyn unfolded the paper, her eyes widening at the lengthy list. "This is months of work." "Then you won't have time to worry about gossip." Rowan's mouth quirked in something that might have been a smile. "Keep you busy through winter at least." I don't know what to say." "Say you'll do good work and charge fair prices. That's all the thanks I need." He moved toward the door, then hesitated. "There's one more thing. The harvest dance is in 2 weeks." Evelyn's stomach sank. "I heard some women talking about it yesterday. I wasn't planning to attend." "Why not?" "Because I'm not a fool, Mr. McAllister." "Rowan." Showing up at a town social when half the population thinks I'm a criminal would be exactly what you need to do, Rowan interrupted. His expression was serious now, all traces of humor gone. You hide away. You confirm everything they think about you. You show up with your head high. You force them to see you as a person instead of a rumor. Or they'll make a scene and humiliate me publicly. Some might try. Rowan's jaw tightened. But not if you have someone standing with you. Come to the dance, Miss Carter. Let the town see you're not afraid of them. Evelyn wanted to refuse. The thought of walking into a room full of hostile strangers made her stomach churn. But Rowan was right. Hiding would only make things worse. Will you... She hesitated, feeling her cheeks heat. Would you be there? At the dance? I'll be there. Something flickered in his eyes. And if you want, I'll make sure you're not alone. The relief that flooded through her was embarrassing in its intensity. Thank you. Rowan tipped his hat and left, climbing onto the wagon and driving away down Main Street. Evelyn watched him go, then turned back to find 3 women standing on the boardwalk, staring at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. The tallest one, a sharp-featured blonde in an expensive dress, spoke first. You're Josephine's niece. It wasn't a question, but Evelyn answered anyway. Yes, ma'am, Evelyn Carter. I'm Mrs. Brennan. My husband owns the bank. The woman's gaze swept over Evelyn's dusty work dress with obvious disdain. Josephine was a talented seamstress. I hope you inherited her skills. I learned everything from her, Evelyn said carefully. Did you? Mrs. Brennan's lips pursed. And what else did you learn in Denver? I've heard some very interesting stories. The woman beside her, younger and prettier with auburn hair, touched Mrs. Brennan's arm. Caroline, perhaps we should... I'm simply being direct, Sarah. Better than whispering behind her back like the others. Mrs. Brennan fixed Evelyn with a cold stare. I don't care what you did or didn't do in Denver, Miss Carter. What I care about is whether you can make me a dress for the harvest dance that won't embarrass me in front of the entire town. Can you? Evelyn's mind raced. This was a test, obviously. Refuse, and she'd confirm she wasn't really a seamstress. Accept, and she'd be under intense scrutiny. Yes, ma'am, she heard herself say. I can. Good. I'll come by tomorrow with fabric and my measurements. I expect perfection, Miss Carter. Josephine's reputation may have bought you a chance, but your own work will determine whether you keep it. Mrs. Brennan swept away, her companions following. The auburn-haired one, Sarah, glanced back with something that might have been sympathy before she disappeared around the corner. Evelyn released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Her first real customer. It should have felt like a victory. Instead, it felt like she'd just agreed to her own execution. The rest of the day passed in a blur of cleaning and organizing. By sunset, Evelyn's hands were raw and her back ached, but the shop looked almost presentable. She lit lamps against the gathering darkness, and was considering attempting to cook something on the unfamiliar stove when another knock came at the door. Martha Hayes stood outside carrying another basket. Brought you dinner again. Figured you'd be too busy to manage it. Mrs. Hayes, you don't have to... It's Martha, and I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because Josephine would haunt me if I let her niece starve. Martha bustled inside, setting the basket on the cutting table. Besides, I wanted to hear how your first day went. Evelyn found herself smiling despite her exhaustion. Mrs. Brennan commissioned a dress for the harvest dance. Martha's eyebrows shot up. Did she now? That's unexpected. Is it good or bad? Depends on the dress. Martha pulled out cold meat pies and fresh vegetables. Caroline Brennan is the most influential woman in Willow Ridge. She sets the social tone. If she's pleased with your work, others will follow. If she's not, I'll be finished before I've even started, Evelyn finished quietly. Essentially, Martha studied her with those sharp eyes. Are you good enough to meet her standards? Yes. Evelyn said it with more confidence than she felt. I am. Then you'll be fine. Martha moved toward the door, then paused. I saw Rowan McAllister here earlier. Brought you supplies. He's hired me to make clothes for his ranch hands. It's just business. Rowan doesn't do just business with people. Martha's expression turned thoughtful. He's a good man, but he's also private. Keeps to himself mostly, runs his ranch, doesn't involve himself in town politics. For him to step in like he did yesterday, to bring you supplies personally today, that's unusual. Evelyn didn't know what to say to that. I'm not gossiping, Martha continued. I'm warning you. People will talk, they'll make assumptions, and some of those assumptions might not be kind to either of you. There's nothing, I believe you, but belief and gossip are different animals. Martha softened slightly. Just be careful, Miss Carter. You're already fighting an uphill battle. Don't give people more ammunition than they already have. After Martha left, Evelyn ate mechanically, her mind churning. She'd been so focused on rebuilding her reputation that she hadn't considered how Rowan's help might affect his. If the town turned on him because of her, she couldn't let that happen. Whatever kindness he was showing, she needed to make sure it didn't cost him everything he'd built. The next morning brought Mrs. Brennan at precisely 9 o'clock, carrying bolts of expensive silk in deep emerald green. I want something elegant but not ostentatious, fashionable but not scandalous. Can you manage that? Evelyn examined the fabric, her mind already envisioning possibilities. May I take your measurements? For the next hour, she worked with professional precision, measuring and sketching while Mrs. Brennan provided commentary on everything from the weather to the price of goods to the moral decay of modern society. Evelyn listened, responded politely, and kept her opinions to herself. When she showed Mrs. Brennan the preliminary sketches, the woman's eyes narrowed. This is actually quite good. Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me yet. I haven't seen the finished product. Mrs. Brennan gathered her things. I'll return in 10 days for the first fitting. Don't disappoint me, Miss Carter. Evelyn spent the next week working herself to exhaustion. She woke before dawn to work on Mrs. Brennan's dress, spent the afternoons cutting and pinning shirts for Rowan's ranch hands, and collapsed into bed each night too tired to dream. The dress had to be perfect, not just good, perfect. She barely noticed when other customers began trickling in. A rancher's wife needing her Sunday dress repaired. A young girl wanting ribbon for her hair. Small jobs, easily done, but each one felt like a tiny victory. Rowan appeared twice more that week, always with some excuse, delivering more measurements, asking about progress on the work clothes, checking if she needed anything. Each visit was brief, professional, but Evelyn found herself watching for him, listening for the sound of his horse outside. On the 7th day, Martha arrived with news. Sheriff Maddox has been asking questions about you. Evelyn's hand stilled on the fabric she'd been cutting. What kind of questions? The kind that suggest he's written to Denver for information. Martha's face was grave. He's trying to confirm the stories, get documentation of whatever happened. He wants proof to use against you. There is no proof, Evelyn said, but her voice shook. Because I didn't do anything wrong. That may not matter if he finds the right people to talk to. Victor Langford has money and influence. If he's willing to lie in writing... Evelyn sank into her chair, the scissors clattering to the table. I'll never be free of this, will I? No matter how far I run. Not by running, no. Martha pulled up a stool, but maybe by standing still. By proving through your actions that whatever they say about you is false. It's harder than running, but it's the only way that lasts. That evening, as Evelyn worked by lamplight, she heard raised voices outside. She moved to the window and saw Sheriff Maddox arguing with someone in the street. Her breath caught when she recognized Rowan, standing toe-to-toe with the lawman. Not your concern, McAllister. I'm making it my concern. Rowan's voice carried clearly through the night air. You leave her alone. She's done nothing to warrant harassment. I'm conducting an investigation. You're conducting a witch hunt. Rowan stepped closer, his posture aggressive. And I'm telling you right now, it stops. You want to investigate someone? Investigate why you're so determined to run off a woman who's done nothing but try to make an honest living. You don't know what she did in Denver? Neither do you. All you've got is gossip and spite. Rowan's voice dropped to something dangerous. Back off, Maddox. I won't tell you again. The sheriff glared but stepped back. You're making a mistake protecting her. Then it's my mistake to make. Evelyn pressed her hand to her mouth, torn between gratitude and horror. Rowan was defending her again, putting himself between her and the town's hostility. But at what cost? She was still standing at the window when Rowan looked up and caught her watching. For a long moment, their eyes held across the distance. Then he touched his hat brim in a small salute and walked away into the darkness. Evelyn returned to her sewing with shaking hands, Rowan's words echoing in her mind. Then it's my mistake to make. Why was he doing this? What did he see in her that made him willing to fight her battles? The dress for Mrs. Brennan came together like a prayer made of silk and thread. Evelyn poured everything into it, all her skill, all her desperate hope, all her determination to prove she was more than the rumors. The bodice fit perfectly, the skirt draped like water, and the delicate beading she'd added caught the light like scattered stars. When Mrs. Brennan arrived for her fitting, Evelyn's hands trembled as she helped her into the gown. Mrs. Brennan stood before the mirror, silent for so long that Evelyn's heart began to sink. Then the older woman turned, examining the dress from every angle. This is... She paused, and for the first time her severe expression softened. This is exceptional work, Miss Carter. Better than I expected. Better than most dresses I've commissioned from Chicago. Evelyn released the breath she'd been holding. Thank you, ma'am. I'll wear it to the dance. Mrs. Brennan met her eyes in the mirror. And I'll make sure everyone knows who made it. It was as close to approval as Evelyn was likely to get. She accepted it gratefully, making the final adjustments to ensure the fit was flawless. After Mrs. Brennan left, Evelyn allowed herself one moment of triumph. She'd done it. She'd proven her skill to the most demanding woman in town. It was a start, a real start. The night of the harvest dance arrived with unseasonable warmth, as if autumn had decided to grant one last gift before winter's approach. Evelyn had made herself a simple dress from fabric she'd found in her aunt's stores. Soft gray cotton with black trim, nothing fancy but well cut and flattering. She'd spent an hour on her hair, pinning it in soft waves that framed her face. Now she stood before her mirror, second-guessing everything. The dress was too plain, too fancy, wrong color, wrong style. She looked like she was trying too hard, not trying hard enough. A knock at the door saved her from further spiral. Rowan stood on her doorstep, cleaned up in dark trousers and a white shirt that made his tanned skin seem even darker. He'd trimmed his hair and shaved, and Evelyn's breath caught at the sight of him. "You look beautiful," he said simply. Heat flooded her cheeks. "You didn't have to come get me. I could have walked." "I told you wouldn't be alone." Rowan offered his arm. "I meant it." Evelyn hesitated only a moment before taking it. His forearm was solid beneath her hand, and she tried to ignore how aware she was of every point of contact between them. The dance was being held at the church hall, a large wooden building at the end of Main Street. Music and laughter spilled from the open doors, and Evelyn's steps slowed as they approached. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered. "Yes, you can." Rowan covered her hand with his. "Head high. Let them see you're not ashamed of anything." They walked through the doors together. The hall fell silent, every head turned. Every conversation stopped. The musicians faltered, then recovered, launching into a new tune with determined cheer. Evelyn felt the weight of dozens of stares, most of them cold and judgmental. She wanted to run, wanted to disappear, wanted to be anywhere but here. Then Mrs. Brennan appeared, resplendent in her emerald dress. She swept across the room with the authority of a queen. "Miss Carter," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I've been telling everyone about this dress. You've outdone yourself." She turned in a slow circle, letting the fabric catch the lamplight. Other women crowded closer, examining the workmanship with undisguised interest. "The beading is exquisite," one woman murmured. "And the fit is perfect," another added. "Could you make something similar for me?" a third asked eagerly. Evelyn found her voice. "Of course. I'd be happy to discuss designs." Just like that, the ice broke. Not completely. There were still hostile faces in the crowd, still whispers behind gloved hands, but enough. Enough that when Rowan led her onto the dance floor, several other couples joined them instead of fleeing. He was a good dancer, moving with the same controlled grace he brought to everything else. Evelyn followed his lead, acutely aware of his hand on her waist, the way he held her just close enough to be proper, but distant enough to avoid scandal. "You're doing well," he murmured as they turned. "I'm terrified." "I know, but no one else can tell." His gray eyes crinkled at the corners. "You're braver than you think, Evelyn Carter." The use of her first name sent warmth spreading through her chest. Before she could respond, the music ended and Rowan led her from the floor to where Martha Hayes stood with punch and refreshments. Causing quite a stir, Martha observed, handing Evelyn a cup. Is that good or bad? Depends on who you ask. Martha nodded toward where Sheriff Maddox stood against the wall, glowering. Some folks are impressed. Others are looking for reasons to tear you down. As if summoned by the mention, Maddox strode across the room. The crowd parted before him like water, conversations dying in his wake. Miss Carter, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. Might I have a word? Anything you need to say can be said here, Rowan interjected, moving to stand beside Evelyn. Maddox's smile was cruel. Actually, I think the whole town should hear this. I've received some very interesting correspondence from Denver about Miss Carter's activities there. Evelyn's blood turned to ice. Around them, people leaned in, eager for scandal. I have documentation, Maddox continued, pulling papers from his pocket with theatrical flair. From Victor Langford himself, details of how Miss Carter attempted to seduce him, then stole jewelry from his wife when he rejected her advances. How she fled Denver to escape prosecution. That's a lie, Evelyn said, but her voice came out thin and weak. Is it? Maddox unfolded the papers. Because Mr. Langford has signed statements from multiple witnesses, his wife, his household staff, even the police who searched your room and found nothing. Evelyn interrupted, her voice stronger now. Anger was burning through her fear, hot and bright. They found nothing because I stole nothing. So you say, but may I see those papers? Rowan's voice cut through like a blade. Maddox hesitated, then handed them over with obvious satisfaction. Rowan scanned them quickly, his expression darkening. When he looked up, his eyes were cold as winter stone. These prove nothing. They're just Langford's accusations dressed up in official language. There's no court verdict, no conviction, just the word of one man against one woman. A respected man, Maddox countered. Respect doesn't equal truth. Rowan handed the papers back with obvious contempt. I've known plenty of respected men who were liars and worse. Hell, I've been called worse than a liar by respectable men, and here I stand. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Evelyn saw several people nodding slowly. The point is, Maddox pressed, she has a history. The point is, Rowan interrupted, his voice rising, that you've got nothing but gossip and spite. If Langford had real evidence, if there'd been a real crime, Evelyn would be in jail right now instead of standing here in my town, making beautiful dresses and minding her own business. Your town? Maddox's face flushed. Who the hell do you think you are, McAllister? Someone who's tired of watching you bully people. Rowan turned to address the crowd directly. How many of you have actually talked to Evelyn, asked her side of the story, or have you all just accepted what some stranger from Denver wrote in a letter? Silence answered him. That's what I thought. Rowan looked at Evelyn, and something in his expression made her breath catch. Evelyn, tell them. Tell them what really happened. Every eye in the hall fixed on her. This was the moment Martha had talked about, the moment to stand still instead of running. Evelyn lifted her chin and spoke clearly. Victor Langford came to my room late one night when his wife was away visiting family. He tried to force himself on me. I fought him off and screamed for help. The next morning, he claimed I'd tried to seduce him and had stolen his wife's jewelry. The police searched my room and found nothing because I'm not a thief. But Langford is powerful and I'm nobody, so people believed him instead of me. Her voice shook but didn't break. I lost my job, my home, my reputation. All because I said no to a man who thought his money meant he could have whatever he wanted. I came here hoping for a fresh start, hoping I could be judged on my actions instead of someone else's lies. The silence that followed was profound. Then, unexpectedly, Sarah, the auburn-haired woman who'd been with Mrs. Brennan, stepped forward. I believe you. Evelyn's eyes widened. Because something similar happened to my sister, Sarah continued, her voice trembling but determined. A wealthy man. False accusations when she rejected him. She wasn't as lucky as you. She didn't escape. She's still there, ruined, because no one would believe her over him. Another woman spoke up. My cousin too. Different city, same story. It happened to a friend of mine, a third voice added. One by one, women stepped forward. Not all of them. Many still looked skeptical or hostile, but enough. Enough that Evelyn felt something in her chest crack open. Mrs. Brennan surveyed the room with her sharp gaze. I had my doubts about you, Miss Carter. I won't pretend otherwise. But your work speaks for itself, and now your words do too. She glanced at Maddox with clear disdain. Unless you have actual evidence of a crime, Sheriff, I suggest you let this matter drop. We have a dance to enjoy. Maddox looked like he'd swallowed something bitter. This isn't over. Yes, Rowan said quietly, dangerously. It is. The sheriff stalked from the hall, slamming the door behind him. For a moment, no one moved. Then the musicians struck up a new tune, and gradually, conversation resumed. Evelyn stood frozen, overwhelmed by what had just happened. She'd spoken her truth, and people had listened. Not everyone, not universally, but enough. Rowan touched her elbow gently. Come on, let's get some air. She followed him outside into the cool night, her legs shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. They walked in silence to the edge of the churchyard, where they could see stars scattered across the vast Montana sky. Thank you, Evelyn whispered finally, for standing with me, for making me tell the truth. You did that yourself. I just gave you a push. Rowan leaned against the fence, his profile stark against the darkness. You were incredibly brave in there. I didn't feel brave. I felt terrified. Bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what needs to be done despite it. He turned to look at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her pulse quicken. You're stronger than you know, Evelyn. The way he said her name, soft and almost reverent, made something flutter in her chest. They were standing close now, close enough that she could see the pulse beating in his throat, smell the clean scent of soap and leather. Why? She asked, the question that had haunted her for days. Why do you care so much about what happens to me? Rowan was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because I know what it's like to be judged for something you didn't do. To have people look at you and see only what they want to see. What happened to you? The question slipped out before she could stop it. His jaw tightened. That's a story for another night. Maybe. Before Evelyn could press, music drifted from the hall. A slow waltz. Rowan held out his hand. Dance with me? Properly this time, without the whole town watching? Evelyn placed her hand in his, and he pulled her close, closer than propriety allowed, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body through her dress. They moved together in the darkness, no music needed beyond the rhythm of their own breathing. Evelyn, Rowan said against her hair, I need to tell you something. Her heart hammered. What? He stopped, seemed to struggle with words. I'm glad you came to Willow Ridge, even with all the trouble. I'm glad you're here. It wasn't a declaration of love, but the way he held her, the roughness in his voice, spoke louder than any poetry. I'm glad too, she whispered. Even though I'm terrified of what comes next. Whatever comes next, you won't face it alone. Rowan pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. I promise you that. And standing there in the starlight, wrapped in the arms of a man who'd fought for her when no one else would, Evelyn Carter allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd found something worth more than a fresh start. She'd found home. The weeks following the harvest dance transformed Evelyn's life in ways she'd never dared imagine. Word of Mrs. Brennan's endorsement spread through Willow Ridge like wildfire, and suddenly women who'd crossed the street to avoid her were appearing at her shop door with fabric and requests. Not all of them. Sheriff Maddox's wife made a point of ordering her dresses from a catalog, and several of the more rigid society matrons still treated Evelyn like she carried some contagious moral disease, but enough that she found herself working late into the night, her sewing machine humming steadily as orders piled up. Rowan visited often, always with some practical excuse. He needed to check on the progress of his men's work clothes. He had measurements for new hands he'd hired. He wanted to discuss the quality of the wool she'd recommended. But Evelyn noticed how his visits stretched longer each time, how they'd fall into easy conversation about everything and nothing, books they'd read, places they'd lived, dreams they'd once held before life had beaten them down. She learned that he'd come to Montana 5 years ago with nothing but a horse and a determination to start over. that he'd built his ranch from scratch, sleeping in a tent through 2 brutal winters until he could afford to build a proper house, that he was respected but not entirely trusted by the town, though no one seemed willing to say exactly why. And she noticed the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, like she was something precious and fragile that he was afraid to touch for fear of breaking. It was a crisp November morning when the telegram arrived. Evelyn was pinning a hem when she heard the telegraph operator's son calling her name from the street. She set down her work and opened the door to find young Tommy Patterson shifting nervously from foot to foot. "Telegram for you, Miss Carter, from Denver." Her blood turned cold. She took the yellow paper with shaking hands, tipped Tommy a penny she couldn't afford to spare, and closed the door before unfolding it. The words swam before her eyes. "Arriving Willow Ridge, stop. November 18th, stop. Business with Sheriff Maddox, stop. Evidence required, stop V. Langford, November 18th. That was 3 days from now. Evelyn sank into her chair, the telegram fluttering from her numb fingers. Victor Langford was coming here. To Willow Ridge, to finish what he'd started in Denver. She didn't remember deciding to run. One moment she was sitting frozen in her shop, the next she was throwing clothes into her carpet bag, her hands moving with frantic efficiency. She couldn't stay, couldn't face him. If Langford arrived with more lies, more manufactured evidence, the fragile acceptance she'd built would crumble. Sheriff Maddox would arrest her, and this time there might not be anyone powerful enough to stop it. She was halfway up the stairs to grab her mother's locket when someone pounded on the door. "Evelyn, open up!" Rowan's voice cut through her panic. She stumbled back down and threw open the door to find him standing there, his face grim, a crumpled telegram in his hand. "You got one too," she said dully. "Martha Hayes did. Telegraph operator's wife couldn't keep her mouth shut." Rowan stepped inside, his eyes taking in the half-packed bag, the chaos of abandoned work. His expression hardened. "You're running." "I have to." "Like hell you do." He kicked the door shut behind him. "Evelyn, listen to me." "No, you listen." She whirled on him, fear making her voice sharp. "You don't know Victor Langford. You don't know what he's capable of. He's rich, he's powerful, and he doesn't lose. Ever. If he's coming here, it's because he's found a way to destroy me completely." "Then we'll fight him." Rowan moved closer, his presence filling the small shop. "Together." "We can't fight him. He owns judges, he owns police, he owns entire newspapers that will print whatever lies he tells them." Evelyn's voice cracked. "I can't go through that again. I can't." "You won't have to go through it alone." Rowan caught her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "Evelyn, you have people who stand with you now. Martha, Mrs. Brennan, the women who spoke up at the dance, me." His grip tightened. "Me, most of all." "And what happens when he destroys you too?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Because he will, Rowan. He'll ruin anyone who stands with me. I won't let you sacrifice everything you've built for someone like me." "Someone like you?" Rowan's voice went dangerously soft. "You mean someone brave enough to rebuild her life from nothing? Someone who works herself to exhaustion to prove her worth? Someone who'd rather run than let the people she cares about get hurt?" "I'm not brave. I'm terrified." "Being terrified doesn't make you a coward. It makes you human." Rowan released her shoulders but didn't step back. "But running now, after you've worked so hard to build something here, that would be giving Langford exactly what he wants. He's counting on you being too scared to fight." "Maybe he's right to count on it." "No." The single word rang with absolute conviction. "He's not. Because I've seen you fight, Evelyn. I watched you stand up in front of the whole town and tell your truth, even though your voice was shaking. I've watched you work until your fingers bleed to prove you belong here. You're a fighter. Don't forget that now." Evelyn wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to. But the terror that had sent her fleeing Denver was rising up again, threatening to swallow her whole. "I don't know if I'm strong enough," she whispered. "Then lean on my strength until you find yours again." Rowan's hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing away her tears with a gentleness that made her chest ache. "Come to my ranch. Stay there until Langford arrives. Let me protect you while we figure out how to fight this." "I can't impose it. It's not an imposition. It's what you do for people you—" He stopped, his jaw working. for people you care about. The weight of what he wasn't saying hung between them. Evelyn knew she should refuse, should insist on handling this herself, should protect him from the storm that was coming. But she was so tired of being alone, so tired of fighting every battle by herself. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Okay." Relief flooded Rowan's face. "Pack what you need. I'll have someone watch the shop." "And Evelyn?" He waited until she met his eyes. "Whatever happens when Langford gets here, you're not facing it alone. Not anymore." Within an hour, Evelyn found herself riding beside Rowan toward his ranch, her carpetbag secured behind his saddle. The November landscape rolled past, golden grasslands turning brown, mountains sharp against the pale sky, the air crisp with the promise of coming winter. Rowan's ranch appeared like a fortress on the horizon. The main house was larger than she'd expected, built of solid timber with a wide porch and real glass windows. Outbuildings dotted the property, barns, bunkhouses, storage sheds, all well-maintained and prosperous-looking. A woman emerged from the house as they approached, wiping her hands on her apron. She was perhaps 50, with graying hair and a weathered face that broke into a warm smile when she saw Rowan. "About time you brought someone home," she called out. "I was starting to think you'd forgotten you had a house fit for entertaining." "Mrs. Chen, this is Evelyn Carter. She'll be staying with us for a few days." Rowan dismounted and helped Evelyn down, his hand steady on her waist. "Evelyn, this is Mrs. Chen. She runs this place better than I ever could." "Flattery." But Mrs. Chen's eyes were kind as she studied Evelyn. "You're Josephine's niece. She spoke of you often in her letters. I'm sorry for your loss. She was a good woman." "Thank you." Evelyn found herself relaxing slightly. "I'm sorry to arrive unannounced like this." "Nonsense. Any friend of Rowan's is welcome here." Mrs. Chen shot him a meaningful look. "And I suspect you're more than just a friend, given how he's been talking about you." "Mrs. Chen," Rowan said warningly, but his ears had gone red. "Don't mind me. I'm just an old woman who likes to see people happy." She gestured toward the house. "Come, Miss Carter. I'll show you to your room." "You look like you could use some tea and a rest." The interior of the house was surprisingly refined. Polished wood floors, comfortable furniture, even a bookshelf filled with leather-bound volumes. Mrs. Chen led her upstairs to a sunny bedroom with a quilt-covered bed and a window overlooking the ranch. "This was meant to be a guest room, but we've never had guests." Mrs. Chen smoothed the quilt unnecessarily. "Rowan doesn't let many people close. You must be special." "I don't know about that. He's just being kind." "Rowan is many things, but he's not kind without reason." Mrs. Chen moved toward the door, then paused. "Whatever trouble you're running from, you're safe here. Rowan will see to that. He's got his demons, that one, but he's also got the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known. Don't let his rough edges fool you." After Mrs. Chen left, Evelyn sat on the bed and let herself breathe for what felt like the first time since the telegram arrived. The room was warm and clean, the bed soft, the window framing a view so beautiful it made her throat tight. She unpacked her few belongings, hanging her dresses in the wardrobe and setting her mother's locket on the bedside table. Then she moved to the window and watched Rowan below, talking with his men, his gestures animated as he gave instructions. He'd done this for her, opened his home, put himself between her and danger, offered his strength when hers had failed. Why? What did he see in her that made him willing to risk so much? That evening, Mrs. Chen served dinner in the dining room, beef stew with fresh bread, simple but delicious. Rowan had cleaned up, changing into fresh clothes, and Evelyn was acutely aware of being alone with him in the intimate space. "Your ranch is beautiful," she said, breaking the silence. "You've built something remarkable here." "It's taken years." Rowan tore off a piece of bread. "When I first arrived, this was nothing but wild land. No house, no fences, just grass and sky and possibility." "What made you choose Montana?" His expression shuddered slightly. "I needed distance. From the past. From people who thought they knew who I was." He met her eyes. "Sound familiar?" "Very." Evelyn traced the rim of her water glass. "Mrs. Chen said you have demons." "We all do." Rowan's voice was careful. Mine just happened to be particularly persistent. Will you tell me about them? He was quiet for so long she thought he'd refuse. Then, my family is from Philadelphia. Old money, old name, old expectations. I had an older brother, James. He was everything I wasn't, charming, brilliant, destined for great things. Rowan's jaw tightened. He was also good, genuinely good. Fought for causes he believed in, helped people who couldn't help themselves, made enemies of some very powerful men in the process. Evelyn waited, sensing the pain beneath his words. They killed him. Made it look like an accident, but I knew. I went after them, looking for proof, for justice. Rowan's laugh was bitter. Instead, I found myself framed for things I didn't do. Suddenly, I was the dangerous one, the violent one. My own family believed them over me, so I left. Came here, started over. I'm so sorry, Evelyn whispered. Don't be. It taught me who I really am. Taught me that sometimes the only way forward is to burn everything down and rebuild from the ashes. He looked at her intently. You understand that, don't you? That's why you came to Willow Ridge. Yes. She felt tears sting her eyes. But I'm not sure I'm brave enough to keep rebuilding if Langford tears it all down again. You are. Rowan reached across the table, his hand covering hers. You're braver than you know, Evelyn, and you're not alone in this fight. The touch of his hand sent warmth spreading through her chest. She turned her palm up, lacing her fingers through his, and felt him tighten his grip. Why are you doing this? She asked softly. Really? Rowan's eyes darkened. Because when I look at you, I see someone worth fighting for, someone worth protecting, someone who... He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. Someone who makes me remember what it feels like to care about something beyond just surviving. Evelyn's breath caught. Rowan, I know it's too soon. I know you've got enough problems without me adding complicated feelings to the mix. He released her hand but didn't look away. But I need you to know that whatever happens when Langford arrives, my standing with you isn't about obligation or pity. It's because you matter to me. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. You matter to me too, Evelyn said, her voice barely above a whisper. More than I expected, more than might be wise. Probably extremely unwise, Rowan agreed, but there was a ghost of a smile on his lips. But I've never been particularly good at making wise decisions. They finished dinner in charged silence, the air between them crackling with things unsaid. When Mrs. Chen came to clear the dishes, she took one look at their faces and smirked. I'll just leave you two to talk, she said meaningfully. Don't stay up too late. After she left, Rowan led Evelyn to the sitting room where a fire crackled in the hearth. They sat together on the sofa, not quite touching, but close enough that Evelyn could feel his warmth. Tell me about Denver, Rowan said quietly. Tell me everything that happened with Langford. So she did. She told him about working as a seamstress in one of Denver's finest dress shops, about how Victor Langford's wife had become one of her regular clients, how Langford himself had started appearing at the shop, making comments about her work, her appearance, her circumstances, how she'd thought nothing of it. He was married, wealthy, old enough to be her father. He came to my room at the boarding house late one night, she said, her voice steady despite the memories clawing at her throat. Said his wife had sent him to discuss a special commission. I believed him. Let him in. She closed her eyes. He tried to kiss me. When I pulled away, he grabbed me, said I'd been leading him on, that I owed him. I screamed. The landlady came running, and Langford left. And then he destroyed you, Rowan said grimly. The next morning, his wife showed up at the shop claiming I'd stolen her diamond earrings. The police searched my room, found nothing, but Langford swore he'd seen me with them. Said I'd tried to seduce him to distract from the theft. Evelyn opened her eyes, staring into the fire. I lost my position. The landlady asked me to leave. Even friends stopped speaking to me. It didn't matter that there was no proof. Langford's word was enough. And now he's coming here to finish the job, Rowan said softly. He won't stop until he's ruined me completely. That's who he is. A man who can't stand being told no. Then we'll make sure the answer stays no. Rowan shifted closer, his arm coming around her shoulders. I meant what I said, Evelyn. You're not facing him alone. She leaned into his warmth, letting herself take comfort in his solid presence. What if it's not enough? What if he has evidence this time, forged or otherwise? Then we'll fight it. Judge Wilson is a fair man. He won't let Maddox arrest you without cause. Rowan's hand rubbed gentle circles on her shoulder. And if it comes to it, I've got enough money and influence of my own to make things difficult for Langford. I don't want you spending your money on me. Then consider it an investment in my own peace of mind, because if Langford succeeds in running you out of Willow Ridge, I'll have to live with knowing I didn't do everything possible to stop him. He turned her to face him, his gray eyes intense. And I couldn't live with that, Evelyn. Not now. The emotion in his voice made her chest ache. Before she could think better of it, she reached up and touched his face, tracing the scar that cut through his eyebrow. How did you get this? Bar fight in my wilder days. Tried to defend someone who was being bullied. Got a bottle to the face for my trouble. His lips quirked. I've never been good at walking away from fights that aren't mine. Is that what I am? A fight that isn't yours? No. Rowan caught her hand, pressing it against his cheek. You're the fight I've been waiting for without knowing it. The words settled into Evelyn's bones, warm and terrifying and wonderful all at once. She was falling for him, had been falling since the moment he'd stepped between her and Maddox's gun, and the realization both exhilarated and terrified her. I'm scared, she whispered. Of Langford? Of this. Of you. Of feeling something real when everything else in my life is so uncertain. I'm scared too. Rowan's admission was so quiet she almost missed it. I swore I'd never let anyone matter to me again, that it was easier to be alone. But then you showed up in Willow Ridge, brave and terrified and absolutely determined to prove everyone wrong, and He stopped, his throat working. I'm falling in love with you, Evelyn Carter, and it scares the hell out of me. The world seemed to stop. Evelyn stared at him, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. You barely know me, she managed. I know enough. I know you're strong and talented and kind despite everything that's been done to you. I know you fight for what's right, even when you're terrified. I know that when you smile, it feels like the sun coming out after a long winter. Rowan's hand came up to cup her face. And I know that I want to be there for every fight you face, every triumph you earn, every moment of happiness you find. If you'll let me. Tears spilled down Evelyn's cheeks. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever looked at her like she was something precious and worthy and whole. I think I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered. And it terrifies me. Good. Rowan's thumb brushed away her tears. We can be terrified together. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. But Evelyn didn't want to pull away. She wanted this, wanted him, with an intensity that shocked her. When his lips met hers, gentle and questioning, she melted into the kiss like she'd been waiting for it her entire life. Rowan kissed like he did everything else, with total focus and barely restrained intensity. His hands cradled her face like she was something breakable, but his mouth was firm and demanding, drawing responses from her she didn't know she was capable of giving. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Rowan rested his forehead against hers. I shouldn't have done that, he said roughly. You've got enough to worry about without me complicating things. Don't apologize, Evelyn's hands fisted in his shirt. Don't you dare apologize for being the first good thing that's happened to me in months. Evelyn, I mean it. She pulled back to look at him. I'm tired of being afraid of feeling something good because I'm worried it'll be taken away. If you want me, if you truly want this, then I'm not going to push you away just because the timing is terrible. The timing is absolutely terrible, Rowan agreed, but I do want this. Want you. Have since the moment I saw you standing up to Maddox with your chin high and your hands shaking. Then stop apologizing and kiss me again. He did. They stayed up until the fire burned to embers, talking and kissing and simply being together in the quiet safety of Rowan's home. He told her about building the ranch, about the hands he employed who'd become like family. She told him about her childhood with her aunt, about learning to sew at her mother's knee, about dreams she'd once had of opening her own shop in a big city. You could still do that, Rowan said. Open a shop. A real one, bigger than what you have now. Maybe someday. If I'm still here. The shadow of Langford's impending arrival darkened her voice. If I survive what's coming. You will. Rowan's certainty was absolute. We both will. And then we'll figure out what comes next. Together. When Evelyn finally went upstairs to her room, her lips were swollen from kissing and her heart felt lighter than it had in months. She lay in the unfamiliar bed, touching her fingers to her mouth, marveling at how quickly everything had changed. 3 days ago, she'd been alone and terrified. Now she had Rowan's strength to lean on, his love to shield her, his determination to match her own. Whatever happened when Victor Langford arrived, she wouldn't face it alone. The morning of November 18th dawned cold and gray, as if the weather itself knew something terrible was coming. Evelyn woke early, dressed in her most severe dress, black with a high collar and long sleeves, and tried to eat the breakfast Mrs. Chen insisted on making. You need strength, the older woman said firmly. Whatever happens today, you'll need strength. Rowan appeared as Evelyn was choking down toast, dressed formally in dark trousers and a vest. He looked every inch the successful rancher, powerful and prosperous, a man who wouldn't be easily dismissed or intimidated. I sent word to Judge Wilson last night, he said. Asked him to be present when Langford arrives. Whatever accusations come, we'll have an impartial witness. Thank you. Evelyn's hand shook as she set down her teacup. I keep trying to prepare myself, but there's no preparing for this. Rowan took her hand. But I'll be right beside you, every moment. They rode to town together, Evelyn clinging to Rowan's solid presence. Main Street was already buzzing with activity. Word of Langford's arrival had spread, and it seemed half the town had found reasons to be downtown that morning. Sheriff Maddox stood outside his office, arms crossed, an expression smug. When he saw Evelyn and Rowan, his smile turned predatory. Miss Carter, Mr. McAllister, I was wondering if you'd have the courage to show up. Courage has nothing to do with it. Rowan helped Evelyn dismount. This is about truth, something you seem to have trouble recognizing. Before Maddox could respond, the stagecoach rumbled into view. Evelyn's breath caught. This was it. No more running, no more hiding. Whatever happened next would determine the rest of her life. The coach stopped, and the driver climbed down to open the door. Victor Langford emerged like a king surveying his domain, tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, radiating the kind of confidence that came from a lifetime of getting exactly what he wanted. His eyes found Evelyn immediately, and his smile was cold as winter ice. Miss Carter, he said pleasantly, how delightful to see you again, though I must say, I'm surprised you had the audacity to show your face after fleeing Denver like a common criminal. Evelyn's voice came out steadier than she felt. I fled nothing, Mr. Langford. I left a city where lies were valued more than truth. Lies? Langford's eyebrows rose. Is that what you call sworn testimony, documentary evidence, the word of multiple witnesses? I call it exactly what it is. Fabrications designed to punish me for rejecting your advances. Gasps rippled through the gathered crowd. Langford's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Anger, barely controlled. I have evidence, he said, turning to Maddox. Evidence of theft, of attempted fraud, of moral depravity. I've come to ensure justice is finally served. Then let's see this evidence. Judge Wilson's voice cut through the tension like a blade. The elderly judge stepped forward, his weathered face stern. Because in my jurisdiction, accusations require proof. Langford's smile thinned. Of course, Your Honor. I have documentation right here. He produced a leather folder, passing it to the judge. Sworn statements from my household staff, police reports from Denver, and most importantly the earrings she stole, which were found in her possession by my investigators. That's a lie, Evelyn said sharply. Nothing was found because I stole nothing. The police who searched your room were incompetent, Langford countered smoothly. My private investigators were more thorough. Judge Wilson examined the documents, his expression growing increasingly skeptical. These statements were all taken months after the alleged theft. And this photograph you claim shows the earrings in Miss Carter's possession is too blurry to be certain of anything. Nevertheless, nothing. The judge closed the folder. This is circumstantial at best, deliberately misleading at worst. Sheriff Maddox, unless you have independent evidence to support these claims, I'm not authorizing an arrest. Maddox's face reddened. But, Your Honor, but nothing. Wilson fixed him with a hard stare. I've known you to let personal bias cloud your judgment before. I won't let it happen again. Miss Carter has broken no laws in my jurisdiction, and I won't let Denver politics dictate justice in Willow Ridge. Langford's mask of civility finally cracked. You're making a mistake, Judge. This woman is a thief and a liar. This woman, Rowan said coldly, stepping forward, is a talented seamstress who's done nothing but work hard and mind her own business since arriving in town. While you, Mr. Langford, are a married man who traveled hundreds of miles to harass a woman half your age because she had the temerity to reject you. How dare you? How dare you? Rowan's voice went dangerously quiet. How dare you use your wealth and position to destroy an innocent woman's life because your pride couldn't handle rejection? How dare you come to my town with your lies and expect us to dance to your tune? Langford's face purpled. You have no idea who you're dealing with, McAllister. I have resources, connections, and I have something you don't. Rowan moved to stand beside Evelyn, his hand finding hers. I have the truth on my side, and in the end, that's worth more than all your money and influence combined. For a long moment, the street was silent. Then Judge Wilson cleared his throat. Mr. Langford, I suggest you get back on that stage and return to Denver. You're not welcome in Willow Ridge. This isn't over, Langford snarled, but there was desperation in his eyes now. His careful plans were crumbling, his control slipping away. Yes, Evelyn said, her voice ringing clear and strong. It is. You tried to ruin me in Denver, and you failed. You followed me here to finish the job, and you failed again. I'm done running from you, Mr. Langford. I'm done letting your lies control my life. You have no power over me anymore. Something shifted in the crowd. Evelyn heard murmurs of approval, saw women nodding. Even some of the men who'd been hostile before looked thoughtful, as if seeing the situation with new eyes. Langford saw it too, saw his influence evaporating, his carefully constructed narrative falling apart. With a final glare, he turned and climbed back into the stage. This isn't finished, Miss Carter, he called through the window. I'll drive on, Judge Wilson told the driver. Get him out of my town. The stage pulled away in a cloud of dust. As it disappeared down the road, taking Victor Langford and his poisonous lies with it, Evelyn felt something in her chest break open, a weight she'd been carrying for so long she'd forgotten what it felt like to breathe without it. Rowan's arm came around her shoulders, solid and warm and real. You did it, he murmured against her hair. You're free. Evelyn turned into his embrace, letting the tears come at last. Not tears of fear or shame, but of relief so profound it shook her to her core. She was free. Finally, truly free. And as Rowan held her in the middle of Main Street, not caring who saw or what they thought, Evelyn Carter realized that broken things could indeed be made whole again. Sometimes all it took was someone brave enough to stand beside you and tell you that you were worth fighting for. The crowd dispersed slowly, people drifting back to their businesses with sidelong glances and whispered conversations. Evelyn remained in Rowan's arms for a long moment, not caring what anyone thought, needing the solid reality of his presence to convince herself that what had just happened was real. Victor Langford was gone. His lies had been exposed. She was free. Judge Wilson approached them, his weathered face softening into something almost paternal. Miss Carter, I owe you an apology. I should have looked into this matter more thoroughly when you first arrived instead of letting town gossip color my judgment. Evelyn pulled back from Rowan, wiping her eyes. You gave me a fair hearing today, Your Honor. That's more than I received in Denver. It's the bare minimum of what you deserved. Wilson glanced at Rowan. You've got yourself a formidable defender in McAllister here. Don't let this one go, son. Women with her courage are rare. I don't intend to, sir. Rowan's hand found Evelyn's again, his fingers lacing through hers with quiet possession. After the judge left, Martha Hayes materialized from the crowd, her face bright with satisfaction. Well, that was better than any theater show. Did you see Langford's face when the judge dismissed his so-called evidence? I was too busy trying not to faint, Evelyn admitted. You did beautifully, both of you. Martha's sharp eyes moved between them, noting their joined hands in close proximity. I assume congratulations are in order? We're not, that is, we haven't. Evelyn felt heat flood her cheeks. We're figuring things out, Rowan said diplomatically, but there was a smile playing at his lips. One crisis at a time. Smart man. Martha's expression turned more serious. There will still be talk, you understand. Langford may be gone, but some people have invested too much in believing the worst about you to change their minds easily. I know. Evelyn straightened her shoulders. But I'm not running anymore. This is my home now. They'll just have to get used to me. That's the spirit. Martha squeezed her arm. Now, I imagine you've got work waiting. Mrs. Brennan's been telling everyone about the dress you're making for her daughter's wedding. You've got at least 5 new customers wanting to talk to you about commissions. The normalcy of it, work, customers, the everyday rhythms of business, felt surreal after the confrontation with Langford. But it was exactly what Evelyn needed. Proof that life could go on, that she could build something real here. She returned to her shop that afternoon, and true to Martha's word, found several women waiting. Some were genuinely interested in her services. Others, she suspected, were motivated more by curiosity than need. But Evelyn welcomed them all with professional courtesy, took measurements, discussed designs, and quoted fair prices. By evening, her appointment book was full for the next 2 months. Rowan appeared as she was locking up, leading both their horses. Thought you might want to stay at the ranch again tonight. Give yourself time to settle before facing an empty shop. Evelyn hesitated. The proper thing would be to decline, to maintain appearances, to avoid giving the gossips more ammunition. But she was tired of doing the proper thing, tired of letting fear dictate her choices. I'd like that, she said. They rode back to the ranch in comfortable silence, the setting sun painting the Montana sky in shades of gold and crimson. The beauty of it made Evelyn's throat tight. How had she gotten here? From the depths of despair in Denver to this moment, riding beside a man who'd fought for her when no one else would, toward a home that was beginning to feel like it might truly be hers. Mrs. Chen greeted them with knowing smiles and a dinner elaborate enough to be celebratory. She'd roasted a chicken, made fresh rolls, and even produced a pie from somewhere. I heard what happened in town, she said, setting plates before them. I'm glad that horrible man is gone. And I'm glad you stood your ground, Miss Carter. Took real courage. I had help. Evelyn glanced at Rowan, who'd been unusually quiet since they arrived. I couldn't have done it alone. None of us can do anything alone, Mrs. Chen said wisely. That's why we have people who care about us. She looked between them with obvious satisfaction. Now eat. You both look like you could use a good meal and a good night's rest. After dinner, Rowan led Evelyn to the porch where they could watch the stars emerge in the darkening sky. He'd brought a blanket, draping it around her shoulders against the evening chill. Are you all right? He asked quietly. Really all right? Evelyn considered the question. I feel like I've been holding my breath for 6 months, and I can finally breathe again. But I also feel strange, like I don't quite know who I am without Langford's shadow hanging over me. You're Evelyn Carter, talented seamstress, brave woman, survivor. Rowan's voice was soft in the darkness. You're the same person you were this morning. The only difference is now the world knows the truth. Not the whole world, just Willow Ridge. It's a start. He shifted closer, his warmth seeping through the blanket. And it's enough. You're building a life here, Evelyn. A real life. That's more than most people ever manage. She leaned against him, feeling his arm come around her. I keep waiting for it to feel real, for me to believe that this is actually happening. Give it time. You've spent so long in survival mode, it's going to take a while to adjust to actually living. Rowan pressed a kiss to her temple. But I'll be here to remind you. Every day if you need me to. Evelyn turned to look at him, studying his face in the starlight. You said you were falling in love with me. I did. His expression was open, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. I am. I know it's fast, I know we're still learning each other, but it's true. It's terrifying. The best things usually are. Rowan's hand came up to cup her face. But I meant what I said, Evelyn. I want to be there for all of it. The hard parts and the good parts. the victories and the struggles. If you'll have me, I want that too. The admission felt like stepping off a cliff. But I'm scared. What if I'm not ready? What if I'm too damaged? You're not damaged. Rowan's voice was fierce. You're scarred, yes. Wounded by what Langford did to you. But scars are proof that you survived, not that you're broken. I feel broken sometimes. Then I'll remind you that you're not, as many times as it takes. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. But Evelyn didn't want to pull away. She wanted this, wanted him, with an intensity that still surprised her. When their lips met, it felt different from the desperate kisses they'd shared the night before. This was slower, deeper, weighted with promise and possibility. Rowan kissed her like she was precious, like he had all the time in the world to learn the shape of her mouth, the taste of her sighs. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Evelyn rested her forehead against his. I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered, and it scares me to death. Good. Rowan's laugh was shaky. We can be terrified together. Seems to be our pattern. They stayed on the porch until the cold drove them inside, talking about everything and nothing. Rowan told her more about his brother James, about the guilt he still carried for not being able to save him. Evelyn shared memories of her parents, of growing up with her aunt, of the dreams she'd had before Langford had tried to destroy them. I wanted to open my own shop someday, she said. Not just work for someone else, but have something that was truly mine. Sounds foolish now. Why foolish? You have a shop. I have my aunt's shop. It's not quite the same. Then make it yours. Rowan's eyes gleamed with sudden intensity. Expand it. Hire help. Build it into something bigger than Josephine ever imagined. You've got the talent, the work ethic, the vision. Why not? Because it costs money I don't have, and because... She stopped, surprised by the resistance she felt. Because what? Because building something that big feels like tempting fate. Like I'd be setting myself up for another fall. Or, Rowan said gently, you'd be refusing to let what happened to you define the rest of your life. You'd be choosing to dream again, to reach for something better. That's not tempting fate, Evelyn. That's living. His words settled into her chest, warm and challenging. When had she stopped believing she deserved to dream? When had survival become her only ambition? I'll think about it, she said finally. Good. Rowan stood, offering his hand. Now, come on, it's late, and tomorrow you've got customers to see and a business to run. He walked her to her room, pausing at the door with obvious reluctance. I wish... He stopped, shaking his head. Never mind. What? I wish I could hold you tonight. Just hold you, nothing more. I sleep better when you're near. His confession was rough, vulnerable. But I know it's too soon, that you need time. Rowan. Evelyn touched his face, feeling the rasp of stubble beneath her fingers. I need time for some things, yes, but not for this, not for feeling safe with you. His eyes darkened. Evelyn, stay with me. The words tumbled out before she could second-guess them. Just to sleep. I don't want to be alone tonight either. For a moment, he didn't move. Then he nodded slowly, following her into the room and closing the door behind them. They undressed with careful modesty, Evelyn behind the privacy screen in her chemise and petticoat, Rowan removing only his boots and vest. When they finally lay together in the narrow bed, Rowan pulled her against his chest with a sigh that sounded like coming home. Thank you, he murmured into her hair. For what? For trusting me, for letting me be here, for being brave enough to want this even though you're scared. Evelyn laced her fingers through his, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong beneath her palm. Thank you for standing with me, for seeing me as more than damaged goods. You were never damaged goods. Rowan's arms tightened around her. Just bent by storms, and storms pass. She fell asleep wrapped in his warmth, safer than she'd felt in years. The next weeks passed in a blur of work and wonder. Evelyn threw herself into her business with renewed energy, and Willow Ridge responded. Orders poured in, dresses for weddings and dances, shirts and trousers for working men, even a custom suit for Judge Wilson. Her skills became the talk of the town, and gradually, the whispers about her past faded into acceptance. Rowan was a constant presence, though he was careful about propriety. He visited her shop during business hours, always with legitimate reasons. He escorted her to church on Sundays, sitting beside her in the pew with quiet pride. He invited her to the ranch for dinners and long rides across his property, showing her the land he'd built his life on. And slowly, carefully, their relationship deepened into something neither of them had expected to find. Winter arrived early that year, blanketing Willow Ridge in snow by late November. Evelyn's shop became a gathering place on cold afternoons, women coming not just for fittings, but for the warmth and companionship. She hired Martha's niece as an assistant, a shy girl named Emma who had clever fingers and a hunger to learn. "You're building something real here," Martha observed one December afternoon, watching Emma carefully hem a dress under Evelyn's instruction. "Josephine would be proud." "I hope so." Evelyn glanced around the busy shop, bolts of fabric organized by color, the sewing machine humming steadily, customers browsing and chatting. "It still doesn't quite feel real." "Give it time. Good things take a while to sink in." Martha lowered her voice. "Speaking of good things, when is Rowan going to make an honest woman of you?" Evelyn nearly dropped her scissors. "Martha! Don't Martha, me. The whole town knows he's courting you, and the whole town is waiting for him to propose." She smiled knowingly. "Some of us have even started a betting pool on when it'll happen." "You didn't." "I most certainly did. I've got money on New Year's Eve. Very romantic, New Year, new beginning, all that." Martha's expression softened. "He loves you, you know. Anyone with eyes can see it." "I know." Evelyn's voice went quiet. "I love him too, but marriage, that's a big step." "It is. But you've already taken the hardest steps, trusting him, letting him see you at your most vulnerable, choosing to stay and build a life instead of running. Compared to all that, marriage is easy." Was it though? Evelyn had spent so long protecting herself, keeping walls up, expecting betrayal. The idea of binding herself to someone permanently, of trusting that completely, still terrified her. But when Rowan appeared that evening to walk her home through the snow, when he tucked her hand into the crook of his arm and smiled down at her like she was the best thing that had ever happened to him, she felt that terror ease just a little. Maybe Martha was right. Maybe the hard part was already over. Christmas arrived with a storm that buried Willow Ridge in 3 feet of snow. Evelyn spent Christmas Eve finishing last-minute orders, her fingers flying over fabric as she raced to complete everything she'd promised. She was putting the final touches on a dress for Mrs. Brennan's daughter when Rowan knocked on her door, stamping snow from his boots. "I come bearing gifts," he announced, producing a basket from Mrs. Chen. "She insisted you needed a proper Christmas dinner, and I wasn't about to argue with her." They ate by the fire in her small sitting room, the shop closed and silent below them. Rowan had brought roasted chicken, fresh bread, vegetables, and even a small cake decorated with careful icing. "This is too much," Evelyn protested. "It's not nearly enough." Rowan's voice was serious. "You've been working yourself to exhaustion, Evelyn. When's the last time you took a day off?" "I don't need days off. I need to build my business." "You need balance." He caught her hand, stilling her restless fingers. "The business will still be here if you rest for one evening. The orders will still be here, but you won't be any good to anyone if you collapse from exhaustion." Evelyn wanted to argue, but she was tired, bone-deep tired in a way that had nothing to do with physical work and everything to do with the constant vigilance she'd maintained for months. "I don't know how to stop," she admitted quietly. "Every time I slow down, I start thinking. And when I think, I remember how close I came to losing everything. How easily it could all fall apart again." "It won't fall apart." Rowan pulled her into his arms, settling her against his chest. "You're not that person anymore, Evelyn. You're not the scared woman who fled Denver. You're established here, respected. You've got friends, a thriving business, a community that values you. Langford can't touch you anymore. What if someone else can? What if there's another Langford, another Maddox, another person determined to tear me down? Then we'll fight them together." Rowan's arms tightened around her. "But you can't live your whole life waiting for the next disaster. Sometimes you have to trust that good things can last." Have your good things lasted? The question hung in the air between them. Rowan was quiet for a long moment. No, he said finally. Almost everything good in my life has been taken from me. My brother, my family, my name, the future I thought I'd have. He paused, then continued softly. But you haven't been taken. You're still here, choosing to be with me every day. That's starting to teach me that maybe some good things do last, if we fight for them. Evelyn turned in his arms to face him. I want to believe that. Then let me help you believe it. Rowan reached into his pocket, and Evelyn's breath caught when she saw him pull out a small velvet box. Rowan, let me finish before you panic. His smile was gentle. I know it's only been a few months. I know we've got a lot to learn about each other still. But I also know that I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. I want to build a future with you, face whatever comes together, grow old watching you transform this town with your talent and courage. He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small sapphire, beautiful in its understated elegance. This was my mother's ring, the only thing I took with me when I left Philadelphia. Rowan's voice roughened. I never thought I'd give it to anyone. Never thought I'd find someone I trusted enough, cared about enough, loved enough to want forever with. But then you stumbled into my life, terrified and brave and absolutely determined to prove the world wrong about you. And I knew. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. Knew what? That you were the only forever I'd ever want. Rowan took her hand, his thumb stroking across her knuckles. Marry me, Evelyn. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday when you're ready. Let me spend my life proving that good things can last, that love can be trusted, that you deserve every happiness you've been denied. The words wrapped around her heart, warm and terrifying and wonderful. Every instinct screamed at her to protect herself, to say it was too soon, to maintain her walls. But she was tired of walls, tired of fear, tired of letting her past dictate her future. Yes, she whispered. Rowan went very still. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you. The words came easier the second time, her voice stronger. I'm terrified and I don't know if I'm ready, but I love you and I want to try. I want to believe in good things lasting. The joy that flooded Rowan's face was incandescent. He slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, as if it had been made for her, and pulled her into a kiss that felt like a promise and a beginning all at once. When they finally broke apart, both laughing and crying, Rowan rested his forehead against hers. Spring, he said. We'll get married in spring when the wildflowers bloom. Give you time to make your dress, give us time to plan, give the town time to prepare for the wedding of the century. The wedding of the century? Evelyn laughed. I think you're overstating things. I disagree. The most eligible bachelor in Willow Ridge marrying the most talented seamstress? People will talk about this for years. He grinned. Besides, Mrs. Chen is already planning the menu. She's been planning it since the day you moved into the ranch. I never moved into the ranch. Details. Rowan waved a hand dismissively. You're there more than you're here anyway. Might as well make it official. Evelyn wanted to argue, but she couldn't. It was true. She spent most evenings at the ranch, most nights falling asleep in Rowan's arms, most mornings waking to the sound of him moving around the room, getting ready for the day. Somewhere along the way, his home had become hers too. They spent the rest of Christmas Eve making plans and dreaming aloud about their future. Rowan wanted children, at least 3, he said, maybe more. Evelyn wanted to expand her business, hire more help, maybe even open a second location someday. They talked about traveling, about seeing the parts of the country they'd never visited, about building something that would outlast them both. And for the first time in her life, Evelyn let herself believe that dreams could become reality. She returned to work the day after Christmas with the sapphire ring glinting on her finger. The shop erupted in celebration when Emma noticed it, and within hours the news had spread through Willow Ridge like wildfire. Customers poured in, some genuinely happy for her, others curious about the details, a few still harboring doubts that a woman like her deserved a man like Rowan McAllister. But Evelyn faced them all with her head high and her hand proudly displaying her ring. Mrs. Brennan arrived mid-morning, eyeing the ring with sharp interest. Spring wedding, I hear? Yes, ma'am. April or May, depending on the weather. Good. That gives me time to order fabric from San Francisco for my dress. Mrs. Brennan's lips twitched into what might have been a smile. I assume you'll be making your own wedding dress? I will. Then I expect it to be your finest work yet. The whole territory will judge you by it. It was a challenge and a compliment all at once, very typical of Caroline Brennan. Evelyn accepted it with grace. I won't disappoint you, ma'am. See that you don't. Mrs. Brennan moved toward the door, then paused. I was wrong about you, Miss Carter. When you first arrived, I thought you were exactly what Maddox said, trouble looking for a place to land. But you've proven yourself. You've worked hard, conducted yourself with dignity, and won over even the most skeptical among us. She met Evelyn's eyes directly. Rowan McAllister is lucky to have you. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. After she left, Evelyn sank into her chair, overwhelmed. Even Mrs. Brennan, the town's most formidable social arbiter, had given her blessing. It felt like the final piece clicking into place, the last wall crumbling. She was truly home. That evening, Rowan took her to the ranch and gathered his staff in the main house. They all knew about the engagement already. Word traveled fast in a small community, but he wanted to make it official. You all know Evelyn, he said, his arm around her waist. Many of you have worked with her, had clothes made by her, gotten to know her over these past months. Now I'm asking you to welcome her as the future Mrs. McAllister, as the woman who will be helping me run this ranch and build our lives here. The men erupted in cheers and congratulations. Mrs. Chen dabbed at her eyes with her apron. Even the normally stoic ranch hands grinned and offered their best wishes. Later, after everyone had left and the house was quiet, Rowan led Evelyn upstairs to his bedroom, the room that would soon be theirs together. There's something I need to tell you, he said, his expression turning serious. Something about my past that you should know before we get married. Evelyn's heart skipped. What is it? Rowan moved to the window, staring out at the snow-covered ranch. I told you my brother was killed. What I didn't tell you was the full story. He took a deep breath. James discovered that several prominent Philadelphia businessmen were defrauding workers, paying them a fraction of what they were owed, pocketing the difference. He was going to expose them, had evidence, and everything. They killed him to keep him quiet, made it look like a robbery gone wrong. Oh, Rowan, I knew who did it. I had James's evidence hidden away. But when I tried to bring it to the authorities, suddenly I was the one under investigation. They claimed I'd killed my own brother in a fit of jealousy, that I was mentally unstable, dangerous. His voice went hollow. My own parents believed them, turned their backs on me, so I took what money I could, destroyed the evidence so it couldn't be used against me, and ran. Evelyn moved to stand beside him, taking his hand. You did what you had to do to survive. I let them get away with it. The pain in his voice was raw. James died for nothing because I wasn't strong enough to fight. You were strong enough to survive, to build a new life, to become someone who stands up for others the way you stood up for me. Evelyn squeezed his hand. James would be proud of who you've become. I hope so. Rowan turned to face her. I needed you to know. Needed you to understand that I'm not just running from gossip like you were. There are powerful people in Philadelphia who'd be very happy if I disappeared permanently. If they ever found me, then we'd face them together. Evelyn echoed his words back to him. Just like you told me we'd face Langford. We're a team now, Rowan. Your fights are my fights. The relief in his expression was profound. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. I love you, he murmured. God, I love you so much. I love you too. Evelyn held him tight, this man who'd saved her and let her save him in return. And we're going to be fine, both of us. Together. They stood wrapped in each other's arms as snow fell softly outside, two wounded souls finding healing in the promise of forever. The winter passed in a haze of preparation and anticipation. Evelyn worked on her wedding dress in secret, creating something beautiful from yards of ivory silk and delicate lace. She designed it to be elegant but not ostentatious, a reflection of the woman she'd become, strong, capable, unashamed of her past but focused on her future. Rowan expanded the ranch house, adding rooms for the children they hoped to have. He consulted Evelyn on every decision, making sure the space would feel like hers as much as his. And slowly, week by week, the last shadows of fear and doubt faded from both their hearts. By the time spring arrived, transforming Montana into a carpet of wildflowers and new grass, Evelyn Carter had become someone she barely recognized from the terrified woman who'd arrived in Willow Ridge 8 months earlier. She was confident, successful, loved. She had a thriving business, genuine friendships, and a future that sparkled with possibility. The night before the wedding, Martha helped her pack the last of her belongings from the shop apartment. "You've come a long way," Martha said, wrapping dishes in newspaper, "from broken goods to beloved bride." "I was never broken goods," Evelyn said firmly, "just bent by storms." "And now?" Evelyn smiled, touching the sapphire ring that would soon be joined by a wedding band. "Now the storm has passed, and I'm ready for whatever comes next." The morning of the wedding dawned clear and warm, the kind of perfect spring day that felt like a gift from heaven itself. Evelyn woke in her old room above the shop one last time, sunlight streaming through the curtains and the sound of birdsong drifting through the open window. Today she would marry Rowan McAllister. Today she would begin the forever they'd promised each other. Martha arrived early with coffee and pastries, shooing away Emma, who'd wanted to help with preparations. "The bride needs calm this morning, not a chattering girl asking a million questions. You can help later when it's time to get dressed." Evelyn sipped her coffee, trying to calm the butterflies dancing in her stomach. "What if I trip walking down the aisle? What if I forget my vows? What if you stop borrowing trouble and just enjoy your wedding day?" Martha's voice was gentle but firm. "Everything is ready. The church is decorated, Mrs. Chen has outdone herself with the food, and half the territory has shown up to watch Willow Ridge's most eligible bachelor get hitched. All you need to do is show up and say, 'I do.'" "You make it sound so simple." "It is simple. You love him. He loves you. The rest is just ceremony." Martha set down her cup and took Evelyn's hands. "But if you need to hear it, you're doing the right thing. Rowan is a good man, and you two are perfect for each other. I've never seen two people more meant to be together." The words settled some of Evelyn's nerves. She spent the morning bathing and washing her hair, letting it dry in the sunshine while Martha pressed her dress and Emma arranged the wildflowers that would make up her bouquet. When it was finally time to dress, Martha and Emma helped her into the gown she'd labored over for months. The ivory silk whispered against her skin like a prayer. The bodice fit perfectly, the lace overlaid delicate as spiderweb, the train flowing behind her like water. She'd embroidered tiny wildflowers along the hem, Montana bluebells and prairie roses, a tribute to the land that had given her a second chance. Martha fastened the buttons up the back while Emma arranged her hair in soft curls pinned with more wildflowers. When they finally let her look in the mirror, Evelyn barely recognized herself. The woman staring back was radiant, confident, glowing with happiness. Not a trace remained of the frightened, broken creature who'd arrived in Willow Ridge nearly a year ago. "You're beautiful," Emma breathed. "Rowan's going to swallow his tongue when he sees you," Martha added with satisfaction. "Now come on, we don't want to keep him waiting." The church was packed when they arrived. Every pew overflowed with people, ranchers and shopkeepers, society matrons and working women, families with children dressed in their Sunday best. Evelyn saw Mrs. Brennan in the front row wearing an elaborate hat, Judge Wilson looking distinguished in a new suit, even Sheriff Maddox in the back, looking uncomfortable but present. But her eyes found Rowan immediately. He stood at the altar in a black suit that must have been specially ordered, his dark hair neatly combed, his jaw clean-shaven. But it was his expression when he saw her that made her breath catch. Pure, unguarded joy mixed with something that looked like awe. The walk down the aisle felt both endless and too short. When she finally reached him and took his offered hand, he leaned in to whisper, "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." "You clean up pretty well yourself," she whispered back, making him smile. The ceremony passed in a blur of words and promises. The Reverend spoke about love and commitment, about two souls joining as one, about the sacred bond of marriage. Evelyn repeated her vows with a clear voice, promising to love and honor Rowan for all their days. When Rowan said his vows, his voice roughened with emotion, his gray eyes never leaving hers. "I promise to stand with you always," he said, going off script, to fight your battles and celebrate your victories, to remind you every day that you're worthy of love, of happiness, of every good thing this life has to offer. You're not broken goods, Evelyn Carter. You're the most precious treasure I've ever found, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving it to you. Tears spilled down Evelyn's cheeks. Around them, she heard sniffles from the congregation, saw Martha dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. "You may kiss your bride," the Reverend said with a smile. Rowan pulled her close and kissed her thoroughly, not caring that they had an audience, not caring about propriety or restraint. He kissed her like she was air and he'd been drowning, like she was the answer to every question he'd ever asked. When they finally broke apart to applause and cheers, Evelyn was laughing and crying at once. Rowan grinned down at her, his thumb brushing away her tears. "Hello, Mrs. McAllister." "Hello, husband." The word felt strange and wonderful on her tongue. Husband. She had a husband. She belonged to someone, and someone belonged to her, not in ownership but in the profound choice to build a life together. The reception was held at the ranch under a canopy of trees strung with lanterns. Mrs. Chen had prepared a feast, roasted meats and fresh vegetables, pies and cakes, bread still warm from the oven. Tables groaned under the weight of food, while musicians played cheerful tunes and people danced on the grass. Evelyn moved through the celebration in a daze of happiness, accepting congratulations and well wishes, dancing with Rowan, and laughing at the toasts his ranch hands made. Even people who'd once been hostile now offered genuine smiles and kind words. Mrs. Brennan cornered her near sunset, a rare, soft expression on her usually severe face. "You've done well for yourself, Mrs. McAllister, better than I expected when you first arrived." "Thank you, Mrs. Brennan. That means a great deal coming from you." "I admit I had my doubts, but you've proven yourself through your work and your character. Willow Ridge is better for having you." She paused, then added quietly, "And I was wrong to judge you based on gossip. I apologize for that." The apology, unexpected and sincere, made Evelyn's eyes sting. "Thank you. Truly." As the evening wore on and the celebration showed no signs of slowing, Rowan caught Evelyn's hand and pulled her away from the crowd. They slipped into the house, up the stairs, to the bedroom that was now officially theirs. "I wanted a moment alone with my wife," he said, closing the door behind them and leaning against it. "Is that terribly selfish?" "Not at all. I was starting to wonder if we'd ever escape." Evelyn moved to the window, looking out at the party still in full swing below. "It's been a perfect day." "It has." Rowan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "Are you happy?" Deliriously. She covered his hands with hers. "Are you?" "More than I ever thought possible." He pressed a kiss to her neck. "I keep thinking I'll wake up and this will all be a dream, that you'll be gone, and I'll be alone again." Evelyn turned in his arms to face him. "I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me now, for better or worse." "I'll take the worse if it means keeping the better." Rowan's expression grew serious. "I need to tell you something. I sent a letter to Philadelphia. To James's old law partner, the one person I still trusted there. I told him the truth about what happened, gave him the location of evidence I'd hidden before I left." Evelyn's breath caught. "Rowan, that's incredibly brave and incredibly dangerous." "I know, but I realized I couldn't start this new chapter of my life, still hiding from the old one. If those men are going to come for me, let them come. But at least James's death won't be for nothing. At least there's a chance they'll finally face justice." "What if they send someone after you?" "Then we'll handle it together." He cupped her face in his hands. "I'm tired of running, Evelyn. Tired of letting fear dictate my choices. You taught me that. You showed me what it looks like to stand your ground and fight for what matters." "I learned that from you," she protested. "Then we learned it from each other." Rowan's smile was tender. "That's what marriage is, isn't it? Making each other better, stronger, braver than we could be alone." Before Evelyn could respond, a knock sounded at the door. Mrs. Chen's voice called through, "Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here asking for Mrs. McAllister. Says it's urgent." Rowan and Evelyn exchanged glances. Who would be looking for her on her wedding day? They descended the stairs together to find a young man waiting in the parlor, dusty from hard riding. Mrs. McAllister? He looked uncertain, as if not quite believing she was real. I'm Thomas Wheeler. I work for the Denver Post. Evelyn's blood ran cold. If Victor Langford sent you— No, ma'am, nothing like that. Wheeler pulled a folded newspaper from his satchel. I came because I thought you'd want to see this. He handed her the paper. The headline made her knees weak. Prominent businessman arrested for fraud and assault. Evelyn scanned the article with shaking hands. Victor Langford had been arrested after multiple women came forward with accusations similar to hers. His business dealings were being investigated for fraud. His wife had filed for divorce. The empire he'd built was crumbling. How? She whispered. One of the women who spoke up at your dance last year went back to Denver and started asking questions, found other victims, got them to talk to a reporter who actually listened. Wheeler shifted his weight. Your story started something, Mrs. McAllister. You standing up to him, refusing to back down, it gave others the courage to do the same. I thought you deserved to know that you made a difference. Rowan read over her shoulder, his arm coming around her waist in support. He can't hurt you anymore. He can't hurt anyone anymore, Wheeler corrected. The evidence is overwhelming. He's looking at prison time. After Wheeler left, refusing payment but accepting a plate of food from Mrs. Chenford's journey back, Evelyn sank into a chair, the newspaper still clutched in her hands. I can't believe it, she said. After everything, after all the power he had, justice actually happened. Because you were brave enough to tell the truth. Because you didn't let him silence you. Rowan knelt beside her chair, taking her hands. Do you understand what this means? Every woman who was too afraid to speak up before, every victim who thought no one would believe her, you showed them it was possible to fight back and win. Evelyn looked at her husband. This man who'd seen her at her lowest and loved her anyway, who'd fought beside her and taught her what it meant to be truly supported, and felt something shift in her chest. The last remnant of shame, the final shadow of doubt, dissolved like morning mist. She wasn't a victim anymore. She was a survivor who'd turned her pain into power, who'd rebuilt her life from ashes and inspired others to do the same. I want to write to them, she said suddenly. The other women. Tell them I stand with them. Then we will. Rowan squeezed her hands. Tomorrow. Tonight, let's celebrate the fact that good people sometimes win, that justice occasionally triumphs, and that broken things can become treasures. They returned to their wedding celebration with lighter hearts, and the party continued long into the night. When the last guest finally departed and they were truly alone, Rowan carried Evelyn up the stairs despite her laughing protests that she could walk perfectly well. Humor me, he said, kicking the bedroom door closed behind them. I've been waiting months to carry my bride over the threshold. He set her down gently, and they stood facing each other in the lamplight. The weight of the moment settled over them, their wedding night, the beginning of their forever. I'm nervous, Evelyn admitted. So am I. Rowan's honesty steadied her, but we'll figure it out together, just like everything else. And they did. Slowly, carefully, with tenderness and laughter and occasional awkwardness, they learned each other. Rowan was patient and gentle, taking his time, making sure she felt safe and cherished. When they finally came together, it felt like the final piece of healing, the ultimate reclaiming of what Langford had tried to take from her. Afterward, wrapped in Rowan's arms with her head on his chest, Evelyn felt tears slip down her cheeks. Did I hurt you? Rowan asked immediately, concern flooding his voice. No, God, no. She pressed closer. I'm happy. So completely happy I don't know what to do with it. His arms tightened around her. Get used to it, Mrs. McAllister. I plan on making you this happy every day for the rest of our lives. The months that followed their wedding were a blur of joy and growth. Evelyn's business continued to thrive, and she made good on her promise to expand. She hired 2 more assistants, moved into a larger shop space, and began taking orders from across Montana territory. Her wedding dress became legendary. Women traveled from miles away hoping she could create something equally beautiful for them. Rowan's ranch prospered too. He bought additional land, increased his herd, and became known throughout the territory for fair dealing and quality livestock. But more importantly, he became known as a man who stood up for others, who gave second chances to those who needed them, who judged people by their character rather than their past. Together, they became pillars of Willow Ridge. When disputes arose, people came to them for mediation. When families struggled, the McAllisters quietly helped. When new arrivals appeared uncertain and afraid, Evelyn and Rowan made sure they received the same welcome Evelyn had eventually found: acceptance, opportunity, hope. The letter from Philadelphia arrived on a crisp autumn morning nearly a year after their wedding. Rowan opened it with shaking hands while Evelyn read over his shoulder. James's old law partner had taken the evidence to the authorities. The men responsible for his brother's death had been arrested. A trial was scheduled. The lawyer wanted Rowan to know that James would finally have justice. "They want me to testify," Rowan said quietly, staring at the letter, "to tell what I know." "Will you go?" "I don't know." He looked at her, vulnerability naked in his eyes. "Part of me wants to see them pay for what they did, but another part of me just wants to let it go, to focus on the life we're building here." Evelyn took his hand. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you. If you want to go to Philadelphia and face them, I'll be beside you every step. If you want to let the law handle it without you, that's valid too. There's no wrong choice, Rowan. Only what feels right to you." In the end, Rowan decided to testify. They traveled to Philadelphia together that winter, a journey that felt surreal to both of them. The city Rowan had fled was still there, grand and imposing, but it no longer had power over him. The trial was brutal. Rowan had to relive his brother's death, face his estranged parents in the courtroom, endure questioning from lawyers who tried to paint him as unstable and vindictive. But Evelyn sat in the gallery every day, her presence a steady reminder that he wasn't alone, that he had a home and a life waiting for him in Montana. When the verdict came back, guilty on all counts, Rowan wept. Not just for the justice finally served, but for the closure it represented. His brother's death hadn't been in vain. The truth had won. His parents approached them after the verdict, his mother reaching out with trembling hands. "Rowan, we were wrong. We should have believed you. Can you ever forgive us?" Rowan looked at them for a long moment. These people who'd given him life but turned their backs when he needed them most. Evelyn squeezed his hand, letting him know whatever he decided was okay. "I forgive you," he said finally, "but I won't forget. You made your choice, and I've made mine. My life is in Montana now, with my wife and the family we're building. You're welcome to write, to visit if you ever find yourselves out west. But this, Philadelphia, the family business, the society you value so much, this isn't my world anymore." It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was honest. And honesty, they'd both learned, was worth more than false peace. They returned to Willow Ridge just before Christmas, and Evelyn had news that made the homecoming even sweeter. She was pregnant. They'd suspected before the trip, but the Philadelphia doctor had confirmed it. A baby would arrive in late spring. Rowan's reaction was everything she'd hoped for. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing and crying at once, then immediately set her down and fussed over whether she should be traveling, working, doing anything more strenuous than sitting quietly. "I'm pregnant. Not made of glass," Evelyn protested, but she loved his concern, loved the way his hand drifted to her still flat stomach with wonder. Mrs. Chen was beside herself with joy, immediately taking over the kitchen and insisting Evelyn needed special foods to keep her strength up. The ranch hands congratulated them with grins and backslaps. Martha started knitting tiny clothes immediately. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through winter and into spring. Evelyn worked as long as she could, then finally accepted that she needed to slow down. She trained her assistants to handle the day-to-day operations while she focused on designs and special orders. Rowan was attentive to the point of being overprotective, constantly worrying about her health and comfort. But beneath his fussing, Evelyn saw the deep joy he took in their growing family, the way he'd talk to her belly at night, telling their child about the ranch and the life waiting for them. Their daughter was born on a warm May evening, after a labor that was mercifully short if intensely painful. When the midwife placed the squalling, red-faced infant in Evelyn's arms, she felt her heart expand in ways she'd never imagined possible. "She's perfect," Rowan whispered, his finger gently touching their daughter's tiny hand. "Absolutely perfect." They named her Lily Rose. Lily for the wildflowers that had bloomed at their wedding, rose for resilience and beauty, growing from thorny beginnings. Motherhood transformed Evelyn in unexpected ways. She'd thought she understood love after marrying Rowan, but the fierce protectiveness she felt for Lily was something entirely different. She understood now why her own mother had worked herself to exhaustion to provide for her, why parents made impossible sacrifices for their children. 2 years later, their son arrived, Adam James, named for new beginnings, and the brother Rowan had lost. He was a sturdy, cheerful baby who rarely cried and smiled at everyone. The McAllister Ranch became known not just for its prosperity, but for the joy that seemed to radiate from it. Visitors always commented on the laughter echoing through the house, the children playing in the yard, the obvious love between Rowan and Evelyn. "You've built something special here," Martha observed one afternoon, watching Lily chase butterflies while Adam napped in Evelyn's arms. "Not just a business or a ranch, but a real home, a place of healing." "That's what it is," Evelyn agreed. "For both of us. We were both so broken when we found each other, but we healed together." The years passed in a rhythm of seasons and milestones. Lily grew into a bright, curious child who loved helping her mother with fabric and designs. Adam showed an early affinity for horses and ranch work, following his father around with determined steps. The business continued to grow, and eventually Evelyn opened a second shop in the territorial capital, managed by Emma, who'd become a talented seamstress in her own right. 5 years after their wedding, Rowan surprised Evelyn with a gift, a large parcel of land adjacent to their ranch property. "What's this?" she asked, examining the deed. "Land for Thomas," Rowan said, referring to his trusted foreman who'd been with him since the beginning. "He's been talking about wanting to start his own ranch someday. I want to help him do it." Evelyn looked at her husband, this man who'd been so wounded by betrayal that he'd fled across the country, and saw how completely he'd healed. The generosity of spirit, the willingness to help others build their dreams, that was the real measure of his transformation. "You have the biggest heart of anyone I know," she said, pulling him close. "I learned it from you." Rowan kissed her forehead. "You taught me that broken things can be treasured, that second chances are worth giving, that love is stronger than fear." "We taught each other," Evelyn corrected. "That's what we do. Make each other better." One golden autumn afternoon, they rode together to a ridge overlooking the ranch. Below them spread the life they'd built, the house where their children were playing under Mrs. Chen's watchful eye, the barns where horses grazed peacefully, the fields golden with late-season grass. "Do you ever think about Denver?" Rowan asked quietly. "About what your life might have been if Langford had never—" "No." Evelyn's answer was immediate and certain. "I used to, in the beginning. I used to wonder about all the what-ifs and might-have-beens, but not anymore. Because every painful step that led me here also led me to you, to our children, to this life. I wouldn't change any of it, even the hard parts. Not even the parts where people called you broken goods?" Evelyn smiled, thinking of that first day when Rowan had stood between her and a hostile town and claimed her as worthy. "Especially not those parts, because those were the moments that showed me what I was really made of. And they brought me the man who saw treasure where others saw damage." Rowan pulled her close, and they sat together on the ridge as the sun painted the Montana sky in shades of gold and crimson. Below them, Lily's laughter drifted up on the breeze, pure and joyful. "Some things people call broken," Evelyn said softly, echoing words she'd spoken years before, "turn out to be the most valuable of all." "I told you so," Rowan murmured against her hair, making her laugh. They sat there as the light faded, watching their home glow warm and welcoming in the gathering dusk. Two people who'd been shattered by life and rebuilt themselves stronger. Two hearts that had found each other in the darkest moments and created something beautiful from the ruins. The story that had begun with shame and fear had transformed into one of triumph and love. The woman they'd called Broken Goods had become the heart of a community, a successful businesswoman, a beloved wife and mother. The man who'd fled his past had found the courage to face it and emerged victorious. Together, they'd built an empire not of money or power, but of love, family, and second chances. They'd proven that wounds could heal, that reputations could be rebuilt, that tomorrow could be brighter than yesterday's darkness. As stars began to appear in the vast Montana sky, Rowan helped Evelyn onto her horse, and they rode home together. Home to the children who waited for their bedtime stories, to the house filled with warmth and laughter, to the life they'd fought so hard to create. Behind them, the ridge stood silent and eternal, witness to their journey from brokenness to wholeness. The wildflowers that had bloomed at their wedding grew there still, resilient and beautiful, a testament to the truth they'd discovered together. Some things labeled broken were simply waiting for the right person to see their value. Some storms, no matter how fierce, eventually passed, and some love stories, born in the darkest moments, shone brightest of all. Evelyn Carter McAllister had learned all this and more. She'd learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to stand despite it. That worth wasn't determined by others' opinions, but by one's own character. That the greatest treasures often came disguised as broken goods. And as she dismounted in front of her home, as her children ran to greet her with sticky kisses and excited chatter about their day, as Rowan's hand found hers with the easy familiarity of 5 years of marriage, Evelyn knew with absolute certainty that every painful moment had been worth it. Because they'd led her here, to this moment, to this life, to this unshakable joy. She was home. She was loved. She was free. And broken goods had become the most valuable treasure of all.